What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto summons the Kyuubi in front of the council? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. Konaha, on most days, was a beautiful town. With its high walls and bright sunlight illuminating the village, most were struck by its natural beauty. Trees were plentiful, and birds chirping in the soft breeze that would occasionally flow through. The place was large, with high building structures, most a light tan-colored, and busy markets. People overflowed the place, and shouts could be heard as marketers bargained for the best prices. On the outskirts of the town was several training grounds, with large fields, and blooming trees surrounding them. On the very back wall stood a tall cliff, with a building jutting out of the side. The cliff contained faces of 4 men, the great Hokages. On top of one of these stood a boy wearing an orange jumpsuit, and a paint can in hand. Around him stood 2 cloaked men, both wearing dark cloaks and animal masks. One of these animal masks was of a badger, while the other one of a hawk. The boy stood there, rubbing the back of his neck and leaning back with a somewhat sheepish expression on his face as he stared at the 2 men. The young boy's hair was a bright blonde, and he had tan skin that seemed sun-kissed by the sun god himself. The oddest thing about him, however, was the 3 whisker marks that adorned his cheeks, along with his bright blue eyes that were the color of the ocean. "Hey," the boy said to the 2 masked men, his voice high-pitched. "I haven't done anything wrong yet. How can I be in trouble if I haven't done anything?" The 2 men looked at each other before Badgerface spoke. "Uzumaki Naruto, you have pulled this prank before and you are the only one stupid enough to do it again. Why would you disgrace the Hokage's faces with paint and still expect to get away with it?" "Well, you see," the boy countered, his voice becoming more and more high-pitched by the second, simply out of nervousness. "I think it would look better with a splash of orange. They're too bland and boring to look at. No color besides the dirt brown." Hawk Face sighed before quickly reaching over and grabbing the paint and brushes from Naruto. "Come with us to the Hokage's office, Uzumaki," he said before the blonde boy could interrupt him. With much grumbling from Naruto, they climbed down the cliffside, and made their way through the busy streets with Naruto in front of the 2 Anbu. The crowd bustled around the 3 and people shouted over other people to be heard. The 2 Anbu soon lost sight of Naruto and ran around searching for him for a minute or 2. They soon caught sight of him standing near the Hokage tower with a smirk on his face. The entrance behind him, Naruto turned to the 2 masked ninja and his grin widened. "What are you smiling about?" Badgerface asked, curious as to what the boy was happy about. That grin was sly, almost like a fox's, and sent shivers up the man's spine. He was trained to be without fear, without emotion, and yet that smirk was too much like the Kyuubi's for his liking. "Oh, nothing," Naruto said as he examined his nails in a show of boredom. "Just that a Kage Bunshin, shadow clone, could fool you so easily." And with that, he disappeared in a puff of white smoke. The 2 turned around and started their frantic search once more for the ninja known as Naruto Uzumaki. Meanwhile, sitting in a ramen stand known as Ichiraku's Ramen, was said boy, with a bowl of the Naruto special ramen in front of him. He chugged it down, barely using the chopsticks at all as he drained the entire bowl. Loud slurping noises could be heard as he finished the bowl of food and turned to the waitress and daughter of the owner of the stand. "Ayame-chan, can I get another bowl of your finest ramen, please?" he begged of the beautiful and nice girl in front of him. She shook with laughter and tried to control it. "Naruto-kun, no need to ask for more. My dad's already in the back preparing another 10 bowls as we speak. We know how you are." Her voice tinkled like an airy bell as she talked to the younger boy in front of her. "Sorry," he said, wiping his face off from all of the ramen juice. "No need to be sorry, Naruto-kun, you bring us the most business in town. We've made a small fortune off of the people you have brought in here so far, and that's not even counting you, so no. There's no need to be sorry," she retorted, a smile on her face as her laughter had faded off. "She's right, Naruto," her father said as he peeked his head out from the kitchen. "You're our biggest customer here." "Thanks, old man Ichiraku. You too, Ayame," he started, but was cut off by the entrance of another customer. "Uzumaki, it's time for your visit with the Hokage," said a voice that Naruto instantly recognized as the hawk-masked Anbu. The boy whirled around in his seat to see the ninja staring at him. "And this time, you're not getting away," he added on. "Sorry, Ayame, old man, but I gotta run. Put this on Iruka-sensei's tab for me, will ya?" he said before forming the ram symbol with his hands, and before the Anbu could do anything, 10 Narutos started running out of the entrance and in opposite directions. Several of them were immediately cut off by Hawk Face, and several more by Badger Face, who was not far behind, but 3 shadow clones remained. One of the Anbus ran after a clone, while the other ran after a clone that was headed to the stadium. The third clone ran towards the training grounds freely. After a minute of chase, Hawkface finally grabbed the clone, and it vanished in a poof of smoke. The other was taken down by a kunai from Badgerface. The third clone made it to the training ground, and hid in the nearby brush. Naruto backed further into the tree line, hoping to hide himself from the Anbu, but ecstatic that he was able to pull this off. Anbu were some of the highest trained ninja, the ninja elite, and he had just escaped 2 of them, not once but twice. Wow, he thought to himself. I must have the best luck in the whole village. Unluckily, however, his foot chose that exact moment to trip over something that was half buried in the ground. He felt himself fall back, and awaited impact on the hard ground, but it never came. He opened his clenched eyes to see the strangest sight. He was knee-deep in water, and he seemed to be in a sewer of sorts. "Hello," he called out only to have it echo around the tunnel he was in. "What is this place?" he thought to himself, only to hear a loud growl come from the end of the tunnel. The growl was fierce, like that of a caged animal, and he wondered what could make that kind of sound. "Where am I?" he called out to the darkness around him. Again the growl sounded, but this time louder. He turned away from the end of the tunnel from which the growl was coming, only to meet with a dead end. Sighing to himself, he headed courageous ly to the source of the growling noise. He could feel the water moving around him, seemingly pushing him to the noise, and could hear the splashing sound from his movements, but oddly enough, didn't feel the water's chill. As he was nearing the tunnel's end, he could hear an inhuman chuckle reverberate from the walls around him. "Silly human," a distinctly feminine, yet cold and evil voice said from only a few yards away. "You dare wander onto my territory. The territory of the greatest Biju to ever live. The territory of the Kyuubi no Kitsune, the 9-tailed fox." Naruto felt a chill run up his spine at that name, but he knew that he couldn't back out now. Still the thought registered in his mind. Maybe I can just wake myself up. That'll work out. I bet this is a nightmare. I know I fell and hit my head on the ground, so maybe this is a dream that I'll wake up from here soon. But a smarter voice registered itself in his head, and its voice rang loud and clear. If this is a nightmare, why not investigate the noise? After all, nothing can hurt you in your dreams, right? His feet unconsciously pulled him forward, unknowingly. He looked up, expecting to see the end of the tunnel, only to be disappointed at the great hall he was in. The room was bare, with the knee-length water in it and ceilings and walls that seemed to stretch on endlessly before giving in to the darkness around them. There was barely any light at all, making the possibility of seeing anything else impossible, except for the sight right in front of him. On the far wall was a giant iron cage. No doors, no gates, no way to get out. A single piece of paper binded to the middle of the giant cage was the only thing holding it together. Behind the cage, Naruto got the feeling that evil was lurking, not helped by the giant red eyes glaring down at him. The eyes were cold, the color of blood, and seemingly endless, a murderer's eyes. "Insolent human! How dare you approach the great Kyuubi in such a manner?" The feminine voice rang out yet again, coming from behind the bars of the cage. "Oh, yeah, well if you're so great, then why are you stuck in a cage?" Naruto replied, gathering courage and strength from the idea that this was a dream. Suddenly, the creature struck out, jumping forward and lashing out between the bars with a giant orange paw. Deep growls and curses came from the fox as it tried to attack Naruto. For a moment, light shined through the bars and a scary sight was saw. A giant orange fox, easily the size of Konaha, with 9 tails behind it whipping out. Each tail was extremely long, longer than Naruto could comprehend as he fell back on his rear trying to escape from the beast. He thought he may have been dreaming before, but this eliminated any idea of such a thing now. There was no way a dream could inspire such fear in him. And the wind he felt off of the paw. Wind he actually felt coming from the creature trying to get to him. It was unreal. If it wasn't for this cage, then this creature would be devastatingly destructive. He had no doubt that it could bring Konaha to its knees, much less the rest of the great nations. "Where am I?" he said as he stood up, mere feet from the giant paw trying to swipe at him. An evil chuckle was heard as the paw retracted to its owner and the Kyuubi sat on its haunches with a gleeful look in its eye. "Your mind, insolent human. You are in your own mind." "My mind?" Naruto replied, glaring daggers at the fox, his voice seething. "Number 1. Why would my mind be a sewer? And number 2. If it's my mind, what the hell are you doing here, you crazy demon?" Anger was building up in him at this outrageous thoughts. "If it were my choice, boy," the fox sneered as it continued, "I would not be stuck inside the stomach of a human. But this is thanks to that damn Yondaime Hokage, and stupid Shinigami. If it were not for them, your village would be leveled and everybody in it dead. And as for your other question," the fox snorted, "this is your mindscape, boy, not mine. I do not fathom the simple workings of your impudent brain, nor do I wish to." "Well, whatever," Naruto harumphed as he sat, rather unceremoniously, on his rear and crossed his arms. He avoided the fox's eyes as he sat thinking to himself. "What the hell am I supposed to do now?" he thought to himself. "I do not know, child, but as it is, you are getting on my nerves." Kyuubi looked at Naruto's stunned expression, before explaining. "This is a mindscape, so your thoughts are automatically projected outward. In other words," Naruto trailed off, "you have no private thoughts while here. Everything you think will be heard as clear as if you had shouted it." The fox finished for him, a smirk playing upon its lips, showing razor-sharp fangs. The boy turned so his back was to the fox and sat thinking nothing to himself while Kyuubi relaxed, getting into a more comfortable position, and then swinging its paw through the gate, trying to reach Naruto. The paw would get only an inch away, before it could reach no more, and the fox would start all over again. The only sounds heard were Kyuubi's paw hitting the water, and the drip-drip of water droplets. This continued for several more minutes, which to the extremely bored pair, seemed like hours. Finally Naruto spoke up. "Hey, fox? When can I get out of here? I do not know, boy, but it seems to be taking a while. Maybe if you moved an inch or so back, I could claw you up enough that you would wake up. That or I'd kill you. Either way, I win." The fox spoke, a grin stretching its way onto her face. "Yeah, right. Hey, since we're stuck here, can I ask you a question?" "Why not, boy?" Kyuubi replied, curious as to what the boy wanted to know. Everyone said that the Kyuubi no Kitsune was a boy, not a girl. The great fox cut him off. "And what? You all think that it has to be a man that is strong, not a female? I could cut your head off for such insolence." It spoke harshly, the words themselves were meaningless, and they both knew it. "Fine," Naruto said, waving his hand. "But what was that thing I tripped on?" "Child, I do not know. But if my guess is right, I want you to take it and hide it." The fox was cut off as a sucking noise was heard and the boy vanished from sight. Kyuubi sighed and laid back, ready to take a nap and be done with the whole ordeal, and hoped that when it woke up, it would have realized this was all a dream. Unfortunately for him, this was not to be, as he heard a loud noise sounding like Naruto. As Naruto laid on the ground panting, he pondered over what the fox had been saying. What did he mean when he said he wanted me to hide it? What is it in the first place? Finally, after a few minutes, he had had enough of laying around doing nothing, and decided to see what it was that he had tripped over. Climbing to his feet, he walked a couple of yards over and looked at what was buried in the ground. His curiosity got the better of him as he got down on his hands and knees to get a good look. The top half that was sticking out of the ground was shaped like a cylinder, and made of thick paper. In the center of the rolled-up paper was a black piece of wood. With a start, he realized that it was some type of scroll. Quickly, he used his hands to start digging the rest of the scroll out. After a few minutes, his nails bloody and torn, but quickly healing, he pulled the scroll out the rest of the way. As it came out of the ground he saw that it had red markings going around the side of it, with symbols he couldn't make out, and some he could. He recognized the kanji for death, destruction, and not least of all, foxes. Excitement in him, he started to unroll the scroll and saw even stranger kanji on the inside of it. What the heck kind of scroll is this? He spoke out loud, not really expecting an answer. It's a summoning scroll, brat, a voice snarled inside his head. He turned around, half expecting someone to be playing a trick on him. However, there was no one in sight. I must be going crazy, he thought, and then jumped when the voice sounded again. Brat, you are a pure lunatic if you do not recognize my voice after having just spoke to me mere moments ago. Kyuubi? He whispered, half hoping that this was now some trick and that he did not have to deal with a bloodthirsty fox inside his head. Quiet brat, do you not understand that this village still trembles at my name, and that a mere utterance of it, and the villagers would be trying to hunt you down once more? The harsh voice of the fox sounded. I can hear your thoughts, boy, so there is no need for you to speak out loud and cause us both trouble. Fine then, Kyuubi, he spat the name of the fox. What the hell kind of scroll is this? The fox seemed to ponder for a few moments, actually keeping quiet, before coming to a conclusion. My guess would be that it is a summoning scroll, and if I'm not mistaken, a fox summoning scroll. Not to be taken lightly, child, so I suggest you tread on water here. Naruto observed this, before finally opening the scroll all the way and looking at it. In the center was a spiral shape, with fox tails pointing outward from it, too many to count. Naruto stared at the picture, his mouth drooling and eyes glazed. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't look away. The fox tail seemed to move the more he stared at it, and he wondered what was going on. Snap out of it, Kit. This has a genjutsu on it. Even with that knowledge in his mind, Naruto still couldn't look away. He stared on, and the spiral in the center seemed to twirl and grow. Remembering something he had learned in class, he pulled out a kunai and sliced his own arm open. The stinging pain brought him back to reality as he examined his self-inflicted wound. Within a second or two more, it closed up, but blood still leaked down and his eyes followed the trail it made. The blood poured out down directly onto the scroll and it quivered for a few seconds, before rolling together into the center of the scroll. It traced the outline of the spiral, and made it glow in a red color. Well, he heard the fox say with a sigh. At least you broke out of the genjutsu, kid. And, since you already made a blood sacrifice, you might as well sign it and be done with it. What am I supposed to sign it with? I don't have a pen or anything. With your blood, kid. The eerier feeling of a blood contract sent shivers down his spine, but he knew that this would make him more powerful and he needed that. If he ever wanted to be a Hokage, he needed to be able to protect the village, and to do that you had to be the most powerful ninja there. This was just one more step in the ladder. He reached down and squeezed his arm for a minute, letting the blood drop before using his finger to write his name in it. His finger blood-soaked and the contract signed, he wondered what he was supposed to do now. He moved his arm and wiped it on the grass. It wasn't the most sanitary thing, but it would do for now. Now, Kyuubi chose this moment to answer the boy's question. You go home and get ready for training. This may be your day off, but you need to go outside the village to practice your summoning skills. Ram, horse, dog, Naruto repeated to himself as a mantra as he tried for the summoning. He placed his hand on the ground, and in a puff of smoke there sat a small fox the size of his hand. It immediately started crying and Naruto covered his ears for protection against the wailing. In a few more seconds though, the little fox vanished. Damn it, Naruto cursed. Why the hell can't I get this right? You need my chakra, fool, if you want to summon more than those small creatures, the fox told him once more. This had been going on for an hour and so far, Naruto had yet to summon more than the small kit that had appeared every time. Kyuubi would try to get Naruto to use her chakra, but Naruto would always refuse, saying he would do this on his own, and without any help. The answer is still no. The Kyuubi settled itself in for a nap, knowing this would take a very long while without its help. Whatever, kit, but wake me when you finally decide you need help or summon anything else besides these small rodents not even worthy of the energy it takes. Whatever, fox. Again, Naruto tried to summon the foxes from the contract, biting the finger on his right hand and frumming the hand seals. He threw his hand to the ground and small black marks spread out, and in a puff of smoke, there stood a fox, only about a foot tall, with two tails waving around on it. It was black, with a white streak running down its forehead, and red tips on the ends of its tails. Naruto could barely move at the fact that he finally summoned something, but when he did, he jumped up in the air and punched his fist upwards. Yes, he shouted out. I finally did it. I told that stupid fox I would and I was right. Wahoo! The fox on the ground turned to Naruto. What did you say about a stupid fox? It hissed out at him. I am not a stupid fox. I am the son of Zerelda, the great Six Tails, and you would do well to remember that. What? Naruto asked, turning to the creature in front of him. No, I wasn't talking about you. I was talking about Kyuubi. Kyuubi? As in the great Kyuubi? Yeah, Naruto told the fox. Although I wouldn't call her so great. Shut up, you fool, Kyuubi told Naruto. I am great, and you would do well to remember that. The small fox's eyes in front of Naruto widened in disbelief. It looked at Naruto for a few moments and bowed down in front of him. What are you doing? Naruto asked the fox. Wait, did you just hear her? The fox nodded his head in acknowledgement. How? Kit, he can hear me because I am Kyuubi. I started the clan you know as foxes. And did you say you are Zerelda's son? Kyuubi addressed the quivering fox. Again the fox nodded, and Naruto had to wonder if it was even capable of speech at this point. Then, child, you would know me as your grandmother. Naruto was almost speechless at this new revelation. Key word. Almost. Grandchild? He all but shouted out loud. He knew that the fox was old, but not that old. It finally raised the question of how old this demon really was. The Kyuubi internally quirked an eyebrow at Naruto before sighing. Yes, grandchild, it snapped at Naruto. As for how old I am millennia older than you. This pathetic village you call home, even older than humanity itself. I am wise beyond years, and in that time, do you not think that at one point I would produce offspring to carry on my legacy? But there aren't any giant foxes for you to mate with, Naruto offered as an excuse. At least not any that I can think of. And besides, I doubt people would be to not notice two giant foxes going at it. The small fox on the ground before Naruto stopped trembling, finally, and stood on its legs to face him. What? The Kyuubi is the start of foxes, with none born before her. Alone, she conceived and birthed the great Zerelda, Zethia, and Zemer. They, in turn, bore children and great-grandchildren until you see the normal fox that is today. Hold on a minute, Naruto complained, cradling his head in his hands. All this information is giving me a headache. Both foxes were silent for a moment, the small fox on the ground sitting on its haunches, its two black and red tails moving in random patterns as it stared at the human in front of it. Let me get this straight, Naruto repeated to the fox. There are more of you? Yes, several, the fox acknowledged with a tilt of its head. I am one of the few males born directly from the grade 3. Zerelda has had 2 children, myself, and of course my baby sister, Zeldarelza. I am the sole heir to the Fox Kingdom, and Zeldarelza the next in line. The only other males besides myself are Zemer, the Fox Prince, and his son, Zebura. Ah yes, it brings back great memories to hear those names. All of my children, grandchildren, and the accomplishments they achieved, the fox spoke lazily, drawn into her own thoughts. They all sat there, mulling over things for several hours as they thought of what they had all learned that day. Naruto mostly leaned back in his standard pose, hands behind head, and leaning back lazily. The small fox in front of him laying on its belly with its 2 tails wrapped around him. And lastly, Kyuubi was in its cell, pondering over all that has happened with this child, Naruto, and how he might finally be the one to bring back the mighty foxes and show the world their power. The boy might actually do it. And to think, I thought of him as a weakling with no sense of anything. Well, Naruto said, yawning as he stretched. It's time for me to head home. I've got training tomorrow and I need the rest if I'm going to prove I truly am a great ninja. I must be on my way as well, Zelda, the small kid told Naruto. If you need assistance in battle, call upon my aid and I will help to the best of my ability. To summon my mom for battle, however, you would need to talk to her first. From this point on, I will be your familiar. Whatever, kits, I am ready for my sleep, Kyuubi said as it started fading into a slumber. Naruto relaxed as he felt the demon withdraw completely inside him, and then looked at the sky, noting the dark blue with twinkling lights dancing in them. Naruto waved goodbye to the small kid. He sighed as he started his walk home, walking just like Shikamaru usually did when cloud gazing. Unknown to him, the small black fox was tailing him, and not returning to the summoning world like it knew it should. For some reason the fox, Zelda, felt drawn to this child, whether it be from the Kyuubi or not. After a few minutes of walking through some of the more fancy districts of Konaha, they arrived at the trashier and more suspicious of the town. Zelda expected the boy to continue walking away from this district, but was shocked when Naruto stopped and turned down a side street. The fox disappeared with one single thought as it watched Naruto enter one of the more rundown of the buildings. They have the container of Kyuubi no Kitsune living here? It seems mother must be informed, and she will not be pleased. Naruto awoke the next morning, feeling slightly refreshed after his encounter with the Anbu, Kyuubi, and of course, the little fox that he had never caught the name of. He still wondered where the fox had went as he had not seen it unsummon itself back to where it came from. Oh well, he thought as he stretched and yawned, climbing out of bed. It probably just went back a bit later than expected. He did not know how true that statement was, nor the fact that it had followed him home and spied on him. He looked over at the alarm clock, noting that he still had 2 more hours until training began, and started pulling off his nightcap, and grabbed his hideously orange jumpsuit and hid ite. Walking past the messy bedroom, he went into the small kitchen and put the pot on to boil for some instant ramen. He set his clothes down on the counter. While waiting for the water to boil, he sat on one of the small bar stools around the small counter that occupied most of the kitchen's space. He let himself drift over all that he had learned the other day, from Kyuubi being a girl, to the fact that it could now talk to him without the mindscape and the horrors that might bring. I still wonder what the hell is up with that. Why is it suddenly communicating with me like this? There isn't a damn reason behind it. The seal is still holding up fine, I can tell that much, but somehow, the Kyuubi talks to me. Maybe I don't know. His thoughts were cut short as the pot started to boil. He jumped off the bar stool and dumped a cup of ramen in the water and headed for the shower to get ready while he waited on the ramen to be done. Throwing open the bathroom door, he walked in, with clothes in hand, and put them on a small alcove beneath the mirror. He pulled off his shirt and boxers, throwing them to the side of the 5 feet by 7 feet bathroom. He turned on the water and let it warm for a second before hopping in and starting to clean himself. He located the soap and started washing his body, rinsing off, and then doing the same with his hair. As he moved to turn off the hot water, however, he caught sight of something that shocked him to the very core. His hand had claws growing where the nails were supposed to be, with tapered points on the very edge of them. His arm, usually hairless for his pubescent form, had thick red hair growing from it. The hair was short, but thick, and a deep blood in color. Examining his other arm, he noted the same problem with it. He jumped out of the shower, not even turning off his water, and looked in front of the mirror. His face was almost the same as usual, but the 3 whisker marks on each cheek were more defined, each having a jagged look to them. His eyes, normally a cerulean blue, had rings of purple on the very edges of them. The purple was an angry, violent-looking color, ranging from a lighter tone to a darker one. "Fucking Cammy," he whispered as he rubbed a hand on one of his cheeks, feeling the indent of one of the whiskers. Snapping out of his trance, he hurriedly shut off the shower and threw on some of his clothes, foregoing his orange jacket, with just his black shirt on. Naruto ran from the bathroom to his bedroom muttering under his breath as he searched through the room, eventually finding a roll of bandage wrappings usually used for medical purposes. He gripped one end of the bandages and started tying it around his hand and arm, stopping the bandages where the first stopped, at his shoulder. He moved his arm and started doing the same for the other one, ending the bandages in the same spot as before. His hand's mobility was a bit limited with the gauze around it, but he knew that he needed to see someone about this as soon as possible. Kakashi-sense, Iruka-sensei, or even the Hokage, but he knew that something was wrong and that it needed to be fixed. "Kakashi-sensei, what am I supposed to do?" Naruto wailed as he waved his arms in front of his sensei. Kakashi was floored at seeing Naruto's arms. "I've got fur growing out of my body and I know it's that damn fox's fault." "Well Naruto," Kakashi said as he inspected the arms, "all I can think of is that you should keep these hidden. Preferably in those bandages. Now, explain what led up to this." So Naruto told him everything, from seeing the fox, to his new summoning ability. "Okay. Demonstrate for me this summoning ability of yours. It's definitely not of Konaha's origin. The only summoning contracts currently associated with this are snakes, currently missing, slugs, monkeys, dogs, and toads. A fox contract is unheard of and definitely disturbing." Kakashi watched on as Naruto made a few seals and called out, "Kachiyose no jutsu." In a puff of smoke and without warning, a large red fox jumped out of the smoke. Kakashi had to jump back to avoid being crushed by its pure size. He made it just in time to see a paw land right where he had been moments ago. He looked up and his eyes widened as he saw the creature. It stood at least as tall as Konaha's walls. It was a sleek red in color with 6 tails waving wildly behind it. Its body was thin and muscled, and looked as if it was ready to attack at a moment's notice. Its eyes were alight and colored to look like blood. Its teeth were bared with its canines poking out and its lips bared back. And on top of its head was Naruto. "See Kakashi-sensei, I told you," Naruto yelled as he waved his arms around wildly. His furry, uncovered arms. "Who has summoned me?" the fox said as it glared down at where Kakashi. "Was it you?" "No, you stupid fox, it was me," Naruto said with pride in his voice and a hint of indignity. He stopped jumping up and down and settled for glaring at the fox. "Stupid fox, You would dare address Zimura like that? I'll show you," the fox growled out as it jumped over the nearest Konaha wall and took off with Naruto clutching onto the fur on its head. Naruto screamed as he felt himself take off and without stable ground except the ground that was 50 or so feet below him. Kakashi just watched on as the duo took off and shook his head at them. "Naruto, what have you gotten yourself into?" Unbeknownst to Kakashi, Naruto, or Zimura, a Konoha Anbu was watching from trees not more than a few yards away. Not just any Anbu. One of Danzo's rude Anbu. Naruto laid on his back panting, miles from Konoha. Zimura had vanished in a puff of smoke a few moments ago, after telling Naruto that he had passed the test. The blonde, being Naruto, had jumped to pump his fist in the air, only for the fox to vanish, leaving Naruto 60 feet up in the air with no way down except a free fall. He was too exhausted after the 8-hour ride on the fox to be able to catch himself on some tree branches, and swing to the ground, which had come up fast and hurt an awful lot when he fell straight into it. So instead of doing the normal thing and getting up to go trek the few miles back to the village, Naruto laid under a small canopy of trees, gazing at the stars in the sky and the leaves moving in the soft breeze that was night. Laying back and relaxing was much more preferable to him than getting up and doing anything else. So it made sense that he eventually fell asleep from all the calm that permeated the air. What didn't make sense was his dream. Naruto's mindscape. Naruto stood in front of the Kyuubi no Kitsune's cage, with waves splashing around him. The sewer was being disturbed, and Naruto had to wonder where the hell the fox was, or what was going on. He could not see the fox behind the cage bars, but he could hear shouting. Naruto strained his ears as hard as he could, but no matter what, he still could not hear any of the words that were spoken over the roar of waves crashing around him and the ground shaking. He stopped, and after a few seconds, the cage bars started glowing a menacing red and the fox's blood-colored chakra started bubbling and winding out of its seal. The waves around Naruto turned to restraints as he tried to escape out of the way of the chakra. It still winded its way towards him, no matter how hard he tried, but he wouldn't give up yet. The water around his hands and ankles turned to manacles and started to bubble and evaporate as the demonic chakra gave off an intense heat. "Damn it, fox, what the hell?" Naruto shouted out right before the chakra reached him and started flowing around him, causing his skin to start burning. He gave out a last cry of pain before he left his mindscape, not catching the look Kyuubi sent his way, nor her words. "Sorry kid, but it's the only way you'll live to see another day. You will need this chakra when you return to your world, if nothing else than to defend yourself properly and keep both of our asses alive." Naruto could barely concentrate on any one sense as all of his senses came rushing back to him at once. Everything around him was blindingly white except for 2 blurs of black situated no more than a few feet away from him. The faint smell of burning incense pervaded the entire room, clogging up his nose and burning it. A simple and rhythmic beeping of some sort of machine helped calm his rushing heart back down. The simple breeze coming from the hospital window, rustling the fur on his arms. Wait, fur? Hospital? With his eyes finally focusing to the light, he could finally make out the sight of 2 Anbus situated near the door of the room, eyeing him but still keeping a wary eye on the door. What seemed like blinding white was just the hospital room in itself. White bedsheets, white ceiling, white walls, white vase on his bedside, even the IV monitor was white. "Where the hell am I?" Naruto shouted as he jumped out of the bed, causing his equilibrium to go off balance from the rush of blood to his head. Still, he glared at the Anbu guarding the door and stalked over to them. "I asked where the hell I was." Yet no matter how loud he yelled, neither of the guards would answer him. Finally, frustrated to no small point, he swung a fist at one of the Anbu. He didn't even have enough time to think as his fist was caught in the Anbu's hand. He felt the Anbu twist his arm behind his back and then cold metal, kunai, against his neck. He didn't even have the chance to struggle as he was forcefully tossed onto the bed. "Yeah, I don't want to talk to you anyways," Naruto said as he crossed his arms in front of himself, while reflecting on how fast the Anbu moved. "I can't believe it. I didn't even see him twitch before he moved, and how he moved. It was so incredible. No Anbu I've ever seen can move like that. He's not normal, and if he is anything to go by, I bet the other guard is just as fast. I'm starting to get a bad feeling about these guys. There is no way I can get out the door with tall, dark and creepy over there. A window?" He looked over at the window and started plotting his escape. It was only a few feet away from him, and if he could set off a distraction, then he would be able to get out. But there was still the problem of his arms. He couldn't run around Konaha in only a hospital gown and with red fur growing from him. He'd be killed in minutes. Or at least brought to the torture and interrogation squad. He thought. I could stop in a nearby alley and pull on some of my bandages, but the Anbu would get enough time to get me again. I need a big enough distraction that they can't or won't follow me. But what should I do? Coming to an idea, he looked to the guards who were watching him intently, their eyes darting from him to the window as if daring him to try and escape. A smirk fell upon Naruto's lips as he formed a single hand seal he knew more than any other. Shadow Clone Jutsu. The hospital room immediately filled with copies of Naruto as the Anbu guards attempted to stop him. One of them drew a blade and charged the main group of clones, eliminating a good number of them in seconds. The rest fell to the other ninja who drew his blade, but stopped right there. For in front of him, what he expected to see a group of Narutos, was instead a group of beautiful blonde girls. Naked, he immediately succumbed to blood loss from nosebleed. Transformation complete, Naruto thought as he climbed out of bed and started for the window. Unfortunately, however, he had forgot about the other Anbu, who tried to stop him from escaping, while trying to fight off the horde of clones that were transformed. All of this was the scene one man came onto as he opened the hospital door, tapping the floor with his cane. Two of his elite Anbu, one downed, the other batting off a harem jutsu, and Naruto with one leg out the window and the other barely touching the ground. Well, what have we here? The man with bandages around his face, revealing only one eye. The eye of one Danzo, the Warhawk. "Well, who the hell are you?" Naruto rudely shouted as he pulled his leg out from the window. He stood in front of the man with his arms crossed, and in a hospital gown, but he still acted with some pride and dignity. "Foolish boy," the old man sneered. "I am part of the Hokage's council, and if need be, the person who will save your life." Naruto twitched at the last part of the statement and stood still, obviously expecting the man to go on. It did not seem that way though as the man leaned further onto his cane to get comfortable. "Well, blah, 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 so what if you're part of the council? Big deal. You're just some old geezer to me. And how can anyone who posts Anbu at my door going to save my life in the first place?" Naruto switched his hands behind his head and leaned back, closing his eyes. If the old man wanted to get comfortable, why shouldn't he? Fire raged within Danzo's eyes and he spat out the next words. "Well, demon brat, you can't go freely roaming the village with your arms in that condition, now can you?" Naruto's eyes shot open and Danzo looked on as they changed from their cerulean blue to a red-tinged purple. In a single bound, Naruto was across the room and holding Danzo by his throat against the wall. The old man still glared at him as the genin spoke in a demonic tone. "Do you have a death wish, mortal? It's because of you and the whole damn council that I have to live like this. That I was beaten within an inch of my life almost every day, all until I could finally stand up for myself, and even then, the only thing stopping you all was the Hokage's threats. As for my birthday, the torture got worse and worse on those days from all the mobs of drunken and angry villagers. I will not stand to be called a monster or demon ever again." Spittle was flying from Naruto's mouth as he virtually screamed at the man. But still, the only thing the man did was glare at Naruto. "Fine then, Uzumaki." He was cut off by Naruto squeezing his throat until he couldn't talk. "So it's Uzumaki now, huh? No more demon brat or other things of the like." Well, let me tell you something, you old wretch. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. Also known as a monster by almost the entire village, the future Hokage, and if you don't stop the insults and threats, your executioner. Naruto finally lowered Danzo to the ground, his grip finally slackening as his eyes changed back to their normal color and he swayed on the spot. Danzo coughed for a moment and rubbed his hands on his neck where there were fingerprints imprinted into his neck. Well then, Danzo said after another cough. I can see that you don't want my offer, so I might as well leave. Good luck with those. He looked pointedly at Naruto's arms and then turned to the door. Wait, Naruto exclaimed, I guess I'll hear you out. Unknown to Naruto, Danzo was rubbing his hands together evilly. Naruto turned his back on the man and climbed into the bed, exhausted, while Danzo took the chair just a few feet away from the bed. Alright, Danzo proposed as he laced his fingers in a Sasuke-like fashion. I will go straight to business. 1. I can tell the villagers and the council about your problem, he indicated Naruto's arms. Or 2. You let me train you and you join my route. It's your choice, but the fact remains that I hold all the cards here. If you go along with the second choice, you will be under my power and jurisdiction. If you go with the first choice, you will most likely be killed or exiled from the village and be forced to become a missing nin. Naruto was visibly shaken by this news. What the hell am I supposed to do? This guy is a creep, and being trained by him, not going to be enjoyable. If I'm kicked out of the village, I won't be able to be Hokage and my dream will mean nothing. There will be nothing for me, and I doubt I'd make it as a missing nin for long. Oh, what the fuck? Danzo drummed his fingers together, enjoying seeing Naruto in such a situation. The boy was backed into a hole, with his dreams, his life, and everything he cared about on the line. I will give you 1 day to decide, Danzo said as he stood up. Meet me at this address tomorrow by sundown if you wish to be trained by me. If not, then use this as a head start to get away, and fast, because the Hokage may be able to stop his Anbu from following you, but mine will hunt you down and kill you. Slowly and painfully, he slipped a small slip of paper onto Naruto's lap before exiting the room, via door. Damn it, Naruto said as his shaking worsened. I really hate that guy. In a large room in the Hokage tower sat an old man in the Hokage robes, before a mountain of paperwork. He simply stared at the bane of his existence, of any Kage's existence paperwork. If he could, he would just use a Kaden jutsu to destroy it all and dance on the ashes, but he knew that it wouldn't be a good idea. The mound was literally over his head, and he was prolonging the inevitable, having to do all this. He sighed as he put his tobacco pipe away, preparing to finish this here and now, when a small distraction occurred. A distraction that he was unprepared for, but still happy to receive, if only to stall the work a bit longer. Hello, Naruto-kun, he spoke as a soft breeze wafted in from the open window, where his adoptive grandson was sitting. What brings you here today? Naruto jumped down from the window and walked across the room to the Hokage, so that he was standing in front of his desk. He could barely see the old man from all the paperwork piled up, adding to his irritation from Danzo's threats. Cut the crap, old man. Now, would you please give me all the information you have on Danzo and his route? I need to get this done and over with soon. Looking at the aged boy in front of him, the old Hokage felt something well up in him. And Naruto, how do you know about him? I made sure that he had never affected you in any way. You shouldn't have even met the man. Naruto could feel his adoptive grandfather's gaze falter at him. He felt his own eyes turn to him over the mound of paper and look at the old man. Look, Gigi. Naruto started explaining about Danzo's threat, the Kyuubi, the summoning scroll, and lastly, his furry arms. So what should I do? The man gives me really creepy bad feelings and I don't trust him. I can't just up and leave the village. No matter how bad they are, I still have people here who are precious to me, and I can't just leave them behind. Sarutobi looked at the boy, who was on the brink of crying, for a few moments before getting up out of his chair and putting a comforting hand on Naruto's shoulder. Do not worry, Naruto-kun. I will make sure it is handled properly. In the meantime though, I want you to go home and grab some clothes and your ninja tools. You need to have the necessities ready in case Danzo pulls any more of this foolishness, or I cannot convince him not to act. He sighed once at what he was to tell the boy next. It would break his heart. But Naruto, if he continues with this, I want you to run. Run and never look back. I will eventually send someone to look after you, and I want you to give the something when they do find you." The Hokage got up from in front of the boy and walked so he was behind his desk. He pulled open a drawer and pulled out a regular-looking scroll with the Hokage's seal on it. Tossing it to Naruto, he turned around and sent some chakra into the wall. A blood seal appeared, and after wiping a bloody finger across it, a section of the wall vanished. Inside of it were 2 large skulls, with notes attached to each one. He turned around and stood in front of Naruto once more. "Naruto, these scrolls are from your parents." Naruto was shocked at the revelation, and the tears that had been threatening to spill came crashing down. "Gigi, why didn't you tell me this before now?" The voice coming from him was heartbreaking, an extremely sad tone that was almost broken. "Why didn't you tell me I had parents when I was younger, when it could have helped change my life?" "Naruto," he sighed, "I did it for your own protection. Your father had many enemies, as did your mother and her clan. That is why I had to tell the villagers that in a last act, she gave her name to an unknown orphan. If I had told them that she was actually your mother, you could have long since been killed. It is the mistake of a foolish old man, and one that I take responsibility for, full-heartedly. I shouldn't be telling you till you are older, but you need to know now, or you may die without knowing even their names." "Who were they then?" Naruto asked, no longer able to look at the face of the Hokage. "Naruto-kun, you will have to find that out on your own. Those scrolls will tell you their names, what they did, and some of the possessions they left you, including a note from each one. But Naruto," he lifted the boy's chin up with a finger. "I don't want you to look at these scrolls until, or if, you have to leave the village. I'm only doing this now because I expect that if you leave, it will be a while before you may return." Naruto nodded dumbstruck and walked out of the Hokage tower to go home. Unbeknownst to them, Sai, a relatively new operative to Root, had been sitting undetectable outside of the Hokage's office since the boy had arrived. He quickly left, mumbling about how this was something Danzo needed to hear soon. Naruto stood in his home, or soon-to-be desolated place, throwing his most precious things in a small backpack. In went a picture of Team 7, extra kunai, shuriken, and some scrolls. The last things to go were the fox summoning contract and a picture of his graduating class from the academy. In the front row sat Sasuke, brooding as always, with Sakura and Ino fighting for dominance of the seat beside him. In the middle row was Hinata, fighting a blush, with Naruto on one side of her and Kiba on the other. They both had their arms thrown over her shoulder, with Naruto holding up a peace sign and grinning, while Kiba had rabbit ears up behind Hinata. In the very last row was Shino, emotionally stoic as always, with Choji and Shikamaru beside him. Choji was munching on a bag of chips as always, while Shikamaru seemed to be asleep on his feet, mainly leaning on Choji for support. Behind them were the Hokage, who happened to drop by for a visit that day, and Iruka. The image seemed fuzzy as tears fell down from Naruto's face, crashing down on the picture of all his friends and comrades. Friends and comrades he may never see again because of a fox and a man that wanted nothing more than to torture him. The picture started crumbling in Naruto's hand as his eyes gained a new determination in them. "I will do this. No matter what, I will make it." His voice was strong, confident, everything he was trying to convince himself of actually being. "Okay, all I have to do is act normal and try to make it. It shouldn't be too hard. Besides, this is Konaha, I doubt they'll just chase me out." He left his house, not knowing how much he'd come to regret the words he spoke, and never knowing that he wouldn't ever step foot in the small apartment again. Walking at a measured pace, he left the apartment grounds to wander Konaha, looking at it all with wide eyes and childlike innocence. This was his home, a beautiful village, and he might soon be kicked out. It was hard to take in as he walked the streets, his feet unknowingly taking him in a direction he knew all too well. A few minutes later, and he was standing in front of his most favorite places, Ichiraku's. Waving aside the orange tent flap, he walked in to see Ayame serving 3 customers and Tucci in the back, cooking. He walked right up to the counter without a thought, and waved to the Ichiraku's. "Hey, Ayame, can I get 4 bowls of miso ramen please?" He yelled out to her. She gave him a small smile before turning away to give the order to her father. "Naruto?" asked an unusually quiet voice from beside him. He looked over to see Ino sitting just 2 seats away from him. Beside her were her teammates, Choji and Shikamaru. "What are you doing here?" "Well," Naruto said, Rubbing the back of his head, "This is my favorite restaurant, so I came here to eat." "What are all you doing here?" "Well," Choji said, eating a bag of chips, "I remember you telling us before Munch that this was the best Munch place to buy ramen in Konaha, Munch, so we decided to try it." Ino immediately slapped the back of his head, mumbling about not eating while talking. All the while, Shikamaru sat at the chair with his head on the counter, half asleep. "Yeah, it is pretty good," Naruto said while moving a few seats over so he was beside Ino. "So, how have you guys been since the academy? All I've heard is that your sensei is the Hokage's son." "Yeah," Ino snorted, "but he's as big of a bum as Shikamaru over there. All he does is have us do teamwork, exercises, and then play shugi and go. Hee, that's pretty funny. But at least your sensei isn't late to every team meeting, and has his whole face covered by a mask," Naruto retorted. "Speaking of teams, Naruto," Shikamaru drawled with his head still down, "did yours almost kill you or something? You never wore bandages on your arms before." Naruto internally cursed himself. He thought no one would really pay attention to the bandages, but Shikamaru, though a lazy bum, had to be smarter than he let on. "Oh, it's nothing," he said casually. "Just a small training accident. Nothing to really worry about." He cringed at having to lie, but he knew that they couldn't know what this all was or they would act like all the other villagers. "Are you sure it's okay?" Ino asked in a concerned voice as she reached out to touch his arm. "I know some basic medical ninjutsu from my mother if you need it." "Nah, every time I get hurt it heals really quickly," Naruto lied once more as he pulled his arm away from hers with a shiver. He felt a stab of guilt for lying but quickly overcame it. It was necessary to keep them all from knowing. They truly couldn't know. "Besides, our ramen's here." He quickly turned away from her to the bowls of food placed in front of him, not noticing the hurt look on her face or the curious one on Shikamaru's. Both Naruto and Choji started gulping down their ramen bowls at the exact same time, and coincidentally, finished 2.5 minutes later. They both sat there, leaning back in their chairs with contented sighs, as Shikamaru continued to slowly eat his soup and Ino watched them in odd disgustedness. "Ew," Ino finally let out. "I cannot believe how you two can both do that and not feel the need for table manners or even tasting it. You're supposed to eat slowly, bakas." "Ino, just let it go." Shikamaru sighed in his usual bored tone, while putting in a mumbled, "What a drag." "Well, hey you guys, it was nice catching up, but I gotta run," Naruto said as he got up off of the stool used for a seat. Turning around, he hit right into a person, knocking them both down. "Ow," Naruto yelled as he fell on his rear. "What the hell? Naruto, you baka," Naruto heard as a fist slammed into his head. He nursed his head for a second to find Sakura standing above him, and Sasuke on his ass a few feet away. "Dobi," Sasuke muttered and got up, knocking away Sakura's hand, and leaned his head out the tent flaps. "Kakashi, we found him." He ducked back inside and stood arrogantly with his hands in his pockets as he waited for their sensei to show up. "Sasuke Teme, Sakura-chan," Naruto said as he righted himself and stood up. Looking over just in time to see Kakashi enter the tent with his nose in his book, he wondered what they had been looking for him for. "Yo," Kakashi greeted. "What the hell are you guys looking for me for?" Naruto said as he glared at Sasuke. "Isn't it obvious, Dobi? You missed training this morning and we had to do all the missions ourselves." Now, Sasuke, I'm sure Naruto has a good reason for missing training, isn't that right, Naruto?" Kakashi asked as he settled a hand on Sasuke's shoulder and gave Naruto an eye smile. Yeah, Naruto waved it off. "You know that problem I came to you about, Kakashi-sensei?" At seeing Kakashi turn serious and give a nod he continued. "I need to talk to you privately about that. Warhawk found out about it and I had to tell Gigi." Kakashi straightened up and a serious look replaced the lazy one in his eye. He indicated outside the tent as Naruto turned to leave. "Don't worry," Kakashi said as he talked to the Sakura and Sasuke. "Me and Naruto just need to talk about something. We'll meet you tomorrow at the training grounds." He quickly turned away from the totally confused group and led Naruto down the street and a couple more streets down until, after a few minutes, they arrived at their training grounds. "Now, Naruto, what all happened with the Warhawk and the Hokage?" "Explain everything." Naruto quickly explained everything he could, down to the last detail, and in just a few breaths. "And so Gigi told me to pack everything I could up, and make sure that I'm ready in case I have to leave the village at a moment's notice." "Wow, Naruto," Kakashi sighed as they sat down. "You must have some of the worst luck out of all your teammates." "I know, sensei, and I don't know what I'm supposed to do about it all," Naruto whined. "I think the Hokage has it all under control, Naruto. You should think more on the positive side," Kakashi said as he gave his blonde student a smile and rubbed the top of said blonde student's head. "What positive side? I can't really think of one at this moment," Kakashi said as Naruto's sweat dropped. "Whatever, sensei," Naruto said as he got up, with his pack still on, and prepared to leave. "I need to get back to my apartment to pack my clothes in case I do have to leave." "Okay, Naruto," Kakashi said before popping out of existence in a cloud of smoke, leaving Naruto to walk back to his apartment. Sunset was upon the village hidden in the leaves as Naruto strolled slowly, still taking in all the sights he could, when he spotted a faint shimmer of light down the street. He was near the village gates, right on the main road in Konaha, and heading his way looked like fire almost. He felt panic seize up in him and felt himself still as a mob of villagers, with weapons ranging from pitchforks to torches, to katanas in their hands. Scattered among the villagers were several ninja, and the occasional anbu, easily identified by their vests or robes. And in the front looked like a man leaning on a cane, heavily bandaged, with a person of extremely pale complexion beside him. "Danzo and Sai, what the hell?" Naruto mumbled as he backed up farther down the road, away from all the villagers. He stumbled backwards for a moment, and tripped, landing on his rear, but still supporting himself with his hands. He could hear their shouts and jeers as they raced down the road to get him, the two people leading the crowd suddenly vanishing into it. He could feel the heat from the torches, his eyes widened impossibly so in fear, sweat pouring down from his face. Memories flashed through his mind of villagers and ninja alike hurting him. "Get away from me, demon. I'm no demon. Kill the piece of trash. No one will miss him anyways. Why are you hitting me? Please, just leave me alone. Who could ever love a demon spawn like you? Now get away from those girls. I was just trying to be nice to them. No one else was." A little boy of around 4 or 5, rocking back and forth, sewer water up to mid-chest. "Why doesn't anyone care for me? Why does everyone hate me?" Tears poured from his eyes, leaving salty tracks barely visible in the darkness. His shirt was tattered and torn, barely passable as a black piece of cloth, his shorts ripped at the knees. All was quiet except the boy's sobs, but a voice suddenly came from above. "Kid, why do you cry? Why do you let them do this to you? Why do you not stand up for yourself?" Because I'm not strong enough," the boy choked out between sobs. "And because this is the only place I can call home. I have nowhere else to go. Tell me, boy, if I could give you a place to call home and power, would you join me? If I could offer you protection, a mentor, and a place to sleep at night, would you come to my side?" "Yes," the little boy said as he stood on wobbly legs, "anything." Naruto stood in front of the villagers, his head down and tears making their way down his face. His blonde hair shadowed his face, making it impossible to identify any of his features. The little boy's tears turned from water to blood, tainting the sewer water around him as he finally stood fully, fists clenched at his sides. Blood started seeping through the water, making it a dull pink. The smell of rust filled the air. Naruto clenched his fists tighter at his side, blood pouring from the open wound on his palm, caused from his own fingernails. The villagers were almost upon him, less than 100 feet away. The boy glared up fiercely at the sky, his tears vanishing as the red rose from the water, forming a cloak around him. Naruto's neck snapped as his head whipped up to glare at the villagers. His eyes red and slitted, red chakra seeping from his every pore. The bandages wrapped around his arms burned off, almost like they were catching on fire. The red fur underneath caught the light, reflecting off as he crouched down in a defensive posture with his hands raised to claw apart everyone and everything. The boy looked at the fox in the cage in front of him. Naruto glared at the villagers now only 30 feet away. They both spoke at the same time. "I will not die. I will kill you." Ready to fight, Naruto lunged at the nearest villager, not even seeing what he was doing as he slashed and lunged. Weapons grazed him, some even went through various parts of his body, leaving open wounds that healed in seconds. Blood flew around him, some of it from a chest he just ripped open on a woman civilian, some of it from a ninja who had tried to hit him with a Fuma shuriken, only to have it caught out of midair and thrown right back at him. All he knew was that he wanted blood, revenge, for all the years of torment and name-calling, from a decade's worth of assassination attempts. All of it unleashed full force on a small army of people who thought they could so easily kill him. They had no idea what they had finally unleashed. Naruto finally finished ravaging his way through the first line of people, mainly civilians, with another 3 or 4 lines of ninjas and villagers alike in front of him. 60 or so people left. He swayed there for a moment, almost catching his breath, as he prepared to charge the next line of people. However, that was not meant to be, as he felt a sharp pain in his gut. He looked down, surprised to see a long katana protruding through his chest. "Die demon," he heard a feminine voice whisper in his ear as the purple-haired Anbu behind him twisted her sword, with it still impaled in Naruto. The blonde felt extreme pain as blood poured from the wound, white-hot flashes traveling up his spine every second, reminding him to get away while he had a chance at survival. The sword was pulled from his gut as the 2 chakra tails behind him started dissipating, leaving him with almost no chakra to do anything, much less get away. He coughed blood as he fell to his knees, barely able to hold onto consciousness. His hands started forming seals, too fast for anyone to stop him, but too slow for a man that had Shimigami grinning above him. He drew blood and pushed his hand to the ground, barely able to get out a Kachiyose no Jutsu, before his vision started fading. The last thing he saw was a white blur grabbing him and running. "What the hell? My whole body hurts like crazy," Naruto said to himself as he laid there in the darkness. He had yet to open his eyes, still wondering if he'd see heaven, hell, or just a blank space of nothing. He knew he had to be dead, that much couldn't be more obvious. After all, who can live through having their systems flushed through with demonic yokai and be beaten by a mob? Naruto knew that he had survived before, but that was because the fox's chakra. But now, that was the cause for his aching body in the first place, not including the wounds from where weapons had pierced him. Still, he had the will to go on, and he knew he needed to, if for nothing else than to prove the village wrong and that he wasn't weak. That he would be the strongest out there, in all the elemental nations. Against some part of himself, he pushed his eyes open. Everything was blurry and hazy, some things not even recognizable. Everything in front of him was black, never-ending black. Off to the sides, he could see faint glows of reds, oranges, and blues. He concentrated harder and was able to make out that whatever was in front of him was a ceiling, and the sides were just walls made up of pipes. Red and blue pipes streaked along the corridor, creating an almost orange glow. Forcing his body to move, he slowly got up by gripping the pipes along the walls, which let off a bout of steam after he had let it go. After a minute or two, he stood on wobbly legs panting. "Damn, I must be really out of shape if this exhausts me so much," Naruto thought to himself as he swallowed a few more gulps of air. "I need to start training harder if I want to be stronger than Sasuke Teme." He slowly started walking down the hall, the splashing of the water with every footstep helping calm him to a degree. He knew he couldn't be dead, especially if he was stuck in here with the fox. Chances are that he was knocked out on the street somewhere, cold and abandoned in an alley. Finally reaching the end of the hall, he started into the cavernous room that seemed to hold the Kyuubi captive for as long as he lived. He was surprised though when he walked up to the giant gates and saw that there was something wrong with the seal. The usual white paper with a kanji on it was soaked through with water, and was bleeding some of the ink off. The worst part was that red chakra was eating at the edges of it, deteriorating it almost. "Hey Fox," he shouted into the dark cage. "What the hell is going on? What happened to the seal?" Upon receiving no answer he tried again. "Hello? Anyone there?" Just barely, he could hear the soft pit-pat of paws walking towards him. I'm coming, stupid human," a surprisingly soft and distinctly feminine voice muttered as whatever it was coming closer. At the sight that greeted him, Naruto almost fell on his butt with a nosebleed. It looked like the fox, the great Kyuubi no Kitsune, was gone, and in its place a beautiful woman. She had long, red hair that reached about mid-waist. Her skin, a creamy white coloring that had such a shine to it that Naruto couldn't help but feel a bit of blood leak from his nose. Her eyes, while giving him a glare, were red, a deep bloody red that any person could get lost in. But what made Naruto fall was that she was nude. Completely, and absolutely, bare butt naked. The 12-year-old genin couldn't help but fall back, blood flying from his nose as the person in the cage sweat dropped. "What the hell?" she screamed at him as his eyes rolled in the back of his head. "One girl naked makes my container fall apart to pieces? How can any male be so weak-willed? Hey, you talk that back, whoever you are?" Naruto shouted as he pointed at the girl with one hand while using the other to wipe his nose. He wasn't a pervert or anything, but a beautiful naked girl suddenly showing up in his mindscape was not a usual thing to deal with, certainly not something he ever thought would happen. "Boy," she growled out at Naruto, her canines bared. "I believe that we had already had this discussion before. I am the great Kyuubi, no matter what form I take. This is just one of the many available to me." "Well, whatever, can you at least put some clothes on, lady?" Naruto screamed right back at her. Huffing, she stood still for a moment before a plain brown cloak settled across her shoulders. It may have been a drab color, but it did its job, reaching down to her ankles and covering every part of her body except for her neck and head. "There, Uzumaki, does that make you feel better?" she complained to him in an annoyed voice. Yep, he smirked at her for a moment before a curious look settled on his face. "But if you have a human form, why do you always take the big fox shape? I mean, isn't being human better than a giant fox that has almost no room in there? I prefer my fox form over all others, simply because it was the natural shape that Kami made me into. In my weakened state though, I couldn't hold the shape as easily and had to go for this watered-down human form. It's considerably weaker than my other forms, thus easier to command and hold." "Wait, how did you get weakened?" Naruto asked as he scratched the back of his head for a moment. "Wait, was it because all of the shouting and demonic energy from before? Does that have anything to do with it?" "Lucky guess," she mumbled under her breath before leaning on the cage bars in front of her. "Yes, I am weakened because of that. But also from healing you twice, and the taxing amount of chakra that comes from your arms now. Couple that with the chakra that the seal usually takes, and you see that I have lost a small amount of it. Although I do have nearly unlimited reserves, my control of it is minuscule." "Alright then," Naruto said as he got to his feet. "What was all the yelling about and what did you do to my arms?" "Well, as to your first question, someone invaded your mind, and attempted to comb through it. Fortunately for you, before they could do such a thing, I took control of the situation and got rid of them. However, as to your second one, you will have to wait and see what they can do. But here is one little hint. By giving you those, I probably saved your life. When you came here, I was trying to flush out the intruder with my chakra, which hit you as well. Pure Yukai covering you did some damage to you, but the worst of it was in your arms, so I had to give you newer and better ones." "Okay," Naruto replied as he narrowed his eyes in suspicion. "One last thing, why are you being so cooperative? Usually you oppose me at every turn unless it benefits you to some extent. And how is this any different?" she retorted. "I will eventually seek a favor and will need your help with it. I do not know the full parts of it yet, but it will help better your training and give me some small freedom. Now, our time together has been short, but it is time for you to go." And just a few seconds later, Naruto vanished from sight before he could form a reply. Sighing, she sat down on the wet ground. "I have no idea what I've gotten myself into with this new container. Sometimes I wish I were still in Kushina. She almost never came by, and I very rarely had to do anything but give some chakra and sleep." In Konaha, Training Ground 7, two people stood on top of the bridge at their regular meeting place, both looking down at the small stream with constant sadness in their eyes. They both knew what had happened, but wished that they had done more. At least they should have been there more for the boy they constantly called Dobi, dead last, or Baka. Now that everything was truly coming out of the closet, they felt even worse for the treatment their teammate had suffered through for years. Neither of them could truly figure out how they hadn't known what had been going on with the blonde, all until their sensei finally pointed it out to them. "You never truly even knew Naruto, did you guys? You never made it a point to even see him, unless it was for training or a mission, but that was it. Other than that, all he ever saw from you were a girl who would hit him just for being in the same room, a boy who would ignore his very presence as much as possible, and even me, the chronically late teacher who had yet to teach him a single thing. And even worse, he still considered us as people that meant the most to him." With the cold, hard truth finally staring them in the face, they had to deal with it all, knowing full well that this was the life Naruto had led thus far, and yet he had still smiled every day, brightening their days no matter what. No matter what, I will be Hokage someday, believe it. And even that his own teammates hadn't seen through his mask, the one that hid all the sadness, loss, and pain Naruto contained, was just pathetic. I will be the strongest, and prove all of you wrong. The pink-haired Kunoichi's feet wavered beneath her as she heard Naruto's voice once again run through her head. Datbeo, Sakura-chan, do you want to go on a date today after training? And yet she had rejected him, time and time again. Mercilessly hurt him, striking him down, and yet, he still got back up every time. No matter what she threw at him, he still kept running after her. She had seen him as so annoying, and yet, now that he was gone, she missed him so much. It was like he had been the anchor for the team, always keeping them from falling apart. Without him there though, it was like, there was no team. She gripped the railing harder, her knuckles turning white almost, as her jade-green eyes tried to hide the diamonds hiding behind them. It was all so futile though, as the tears eventually made their way down her face. Her eyes shut tight, hoping to get rid of this need to see her teammate again, just once more. The tears ran past her lips, leaving the saltiest of tastes behind. Even now, she could hear the boy in the back of her head, the boy that had tried to comfort her when she was so much younger. Why are you crying? B. Because all the other kids made fun of my forehead. What's wrong with your forehead? I think it's pretty. B. Because it's big. You know, a pretty girl like you shouldn't cry. You would look even prettier smiling. Everything was just so wrong now, and both her and her last teammate knew it. Sasuke himself felt bad from the loss of a rival that was almost like a brother, but even now he had to get stronger, just to find Itachi and kill him. But Naruto was the one person who understood him most. The blonde had been born with no one to care for him, but tried to gain friends at every opportunity he could. Sasuke himself had been born with everything, money, family, and the next-in-line heir to the Uchiha clan, but had lost all of it in one night. Sasuke? His teammate interrupted his train of thought. What are we supposed to do now? He could only shake his head and hope for the best. Scene break. Ino Yamanaka was horrified beyond belief when she had heard the news about Naruto. She had found out when her dad had come home at 1 in the morning. It was horrible. Blood everywhere. Apparently a mob had chased and attacked one of your old classmates. Naruto Uzumaki. He had killed several of them before fleeing the village. We had to have a council meeting about it, and the damn elders decided that they should list him in the missing nin bingo book. He's only a damn child. But what was worse was the other rumors she heard. Working in a flower shop all day helped her send and receive rumors like no one else. The demon should have been killed, not chased out of the village so he can harm others. She had heard from an old lady that had just browsed until Ino had told her off for talking about Naruto like that. Sure, she had hit him when they were younger, but that didn't mean he was a demon. Shut up, old lady, Naruto is not a demon and anyone who thinks otherwise is not welcome here. So, the Yamanaka slut is concording with the demon child, my, how the clans have fallen. The old lady had ran out of the store before Ino could get her hands around her neck. Then, not even an hour later, she had heard screaming and yelling from outside the store. Curious, she had went outside to check it out. What she found was horrible. A bunch of drunken men and women were dancing around in the middle of the street. Every few seconds they would shout out, "Ding, dong, the wicked demon's gone." She had thought it couldn't get any worse. She was wrong. Ino was at practice with Choji and Shikamaru. Their team leader, Asuma, hadn't shown up yet, so they had started practice early. After a few minutes, they took a small break and that's when their sensei decided to grace them with his presence. "What's going on, Asuma-sensei?" Shikamaru had asked as he watched the clouds drift by. "You're usually not late to practice." "Well, I'm sure you guys had heard about what happened to Naruto," the young Sarutobi asked, receiving nods all around. "Well, apparently some shinobi were mixed in with the crowd that attacked him, so every single Junin and Chunin were brought into the interrogation and torture for questioning. About half the Chunin were in the mob, but most of them were killed as of last night. There were 2 Junin and about 5 Anbu mixed in as well. I think the kid's just lucky he got away or he would have had a hell of a chase running." "Oh, that's nothing munch, Asuma-sensei. Naruto used to munch get chased by ninja all the munch time for painting the Hokage monument munch. The only one to ever catch him was Munch Iruka-sensei." Something still didn't seem right to Ino. Mobs don't just chase down innocent boys for no reason. She had tried to figure out why, using the library, people, even her gossip circles, all to no avail. The book's missed documented pages, people clamored up, and even her own circles wouldn't talk. This was all so frustrating to her, so much so that she wanted to pull her hair out. What is the secret that is Naruto Uzumaki? Scene break. Hinata's day had gone from bad to worse with all that she had heard and experienced. Firstly, her father had gone missing for several hours the previous night. Then, when she awoke the next morning, the clan council had her and Hanabi spar once more to prove their skills. Hinata had lost. After that and a quick breakfast, she had left the main branch houses, only to find several Anbu dashing through the compound. Not being able to get the nerve to ask what was wrong, she had left to go train with her team. Hello, Kiba-kun, Shino-kun, Hinata said as she arrived on the training field. Hey, Hinata, she received from a loud-mouthed Kiba and a small, hello, from the ever-stoic Shino. Have you heard from Kurenai-sensei, Hinata? Shino over here thinks something is wrong because there were a few Anbu at his cousin's house and there was one talking to my mom this morning, Kiba told her as Akamaru barked along with him. There were a few at the Hyuga clan compound this morning as well, but I haven't heard anything, she stuttered to her teammate. With the fact being that neither of them knew what was wrong, and Shino wasn't talking, mainly trying to figure it all out himself but having already got an idea, they had nothing to do until their sensei could show up. Kiba entertained himself by practicing with Akamaru, Shino wandered the training grounds looking for bugs, and Hinata watched them both, thinking about her longtime crush, Naruto. It wasn't until a half-hour later that a haggard-looking Kurenai shunshined onto the training field. Her eyes were drooping and had black rings around them from stress and a sleepless night. Her hair was disarrayed and matted, showing lack of time to properly get ready. All of that, combined with the slightly dirty bandages, obviously stained with blood, showed a worse-for-wear Kurenai. What happened, Kurenai-sensei? You look like hell, Kiba said in his usual tactless manner. Indeed, you do, Shino told her as he dropped from a nearby branch on a tree. I got held up at the torture and interrogation last night with Anko. She got brought in because a genin got chased and attacked by a mob containing both ninjas and civilians. Apparently a few of us Junin got roped into helping capture some of the mob that tried to escape. Who was the genin, sensei? Hinata asked in her usual stutter. And the answer she received was the name she least expected, and the one that broke her to the very core. Naruto Uzumaki, somewhere in the middle of Fire Country. Faint light could be seen, penetrating through the eyelids of one blonde being carried through the forest at a pace so fast, only a yellow and white blur were seen. The figure that was carting the blonde was muscled, that much obvious from the speed they were going. That was the only thing one could tell from the duo, except the blonde favored bright colors, as his jumpsuit was orange. It had obviously seen better days as it had mud running up one side and was torn all over, with bloody patches splattered across the front. The blonde himself, however, carried no scars or signs of fighting, except the 3 whisker marks running from each cheek to his jaw. Where am I? The blonde grumbled as he squinted through his eyelids to try and see where he was. The light, however, was too bright for him, and he could not see anything except blurs of white, green, and brown until his eyes adjusted. He tried to momentarily cover his face with his arm, but a flash of pain shot up it as soon as he tried to move it. Shit, he cursed as it felt like fire coursed through his veins from his right arm. He breathed heavily for a moment and laid still, finally noticing something else when the pain dulled. It felt like he was moving. The wind brushed against his cheek, making him wonder why the hell he was moving. His mind automatically tried to come up with an answer. Well, either the summoning technique worked, and I am far away from Konaha, or I've been killed and Kami is carrying me to heaven. Peefed, yeah right. The damn summoning went off without a hitch. I ain't dead yet. Just a few seconds later, he finally saw what was carrying him. From what he could see, he could tell that it wasn't like an ordinary fox, mainly because it was running on 2 feet. Judging how far Naruto was up cradled against the fox's chest with the nearest tree branch several feet below him, the fox was at least 7 or 8 feet tall. He couldn't fathom a summon like this, nor how it got to be like this. After a minute of being ignored, Naruto, and his usual tactless self, decided to speak to the monster fox carrying him like a child. Who the hell are you? The great beast looked down at him and Naruto finally got a good look at him. His face was pure white, only broken by the black lines of his whiskers. His eyes were a warm ember color with gold speckles in them. 2 black lines ran down from his eyes, going down until they met the edge of his maw. Think of the purple lines on Orochimaru's face. His mouth was closed, but behind it, Naruto could almost picture the razor-sharp canine teeth that could probably shred anything to pieces. "Who the hell are you, shrimp?" The fox growled back at him, his voice gruff. "Naruto Uzumaki, now who are you?" Zetsune, one of the 3 Kitsune guard and personal guard to Zebura. He spoke proudly to the boy before coming to a halt and jumping off a tree branch to the ground 20 feet away. "You can let me down, ya know," Naruto said, and then oomphed as the monster fox. Zetsune dropped him like a sack of potatoes. "You didn't have to be so rough, damn fox." Naruto looked up, finally getting a full body picture of what had saved him looked like, aside from its face. The main feature about it was its height, towering over him easily. Its chest was solid white, well-defined muscles showing beneath his fur. The only break from endless white was a spot of black right below its collarbone that was diamond in shape. On his back rested a long sword, just as long as the fox was tall, and every bit as wide too. It was covered in wrappings that had gold patterns along the edge that the boy couldn't make out. On its shoulder was a circular shield, 3 feet in diameter and black in color with silver markings on it and the kanji for sake. Lastly was its tails, 2 solid white, blue-tipped tails curled around his waist. "Didn't have to be doesn't mean I didn't want to nor that I didn't enjoy it. How would you feel if you get mysteriously summoned from a poker game to a village street that was lined with dead bodies and a kid passed out on top of you? I would certainly want to get back at your ass, no matter what. Especially when I am chased from said village with a mob on my tail, and no way yet to get home. Now, why were you surrounded by dead people with more people on their way to get you?" the fox asked, glaring a hole at Naruto. Naruto immediately sobered up and pondered lying to Zetsune, not telling him that the village he had been forever faithful to decided that killing him off would be a good idea. Just because of what he contained, he was ostracized and hated enough to have an assassination attempt on his life. But he knew that he was also a horrible liar, and foxes were known for their cunning, weren't they? Any smart person would be able to figure out what he wanted to hide. But not telling conflicted with his want to spill out all his troubles to someone that wasn't that biased and wouldn't judge him. Eventually, the idea of spilling his guts to a stranger won over and he began his story. "It's a really long story," Naruto drawled out as he sat down cross-legged in front of the mammoth beast. "Until I can figure out how to get back, I've got time," the fox concluded for him as he sat down on a moss-covered log. "Well, where to begin?" Naruto contemplated, tapping his chin for extra show. "Okay, how about birth? I was born on October 10th, 12 years ago. The day the Kyuubi no Kitsune attacked the village hidden in the leaves. The 4th Hokage couldn't kill it, so he sealed it into a baby that had just had his umbilical cord cut. That baby was me." The fox already looked like he had 100 questions, but Naruto quelled him with a look. "So, the baby was sent to an orphanage to live a hopefully normal life. Guess that idea got fucked up, huh? Well, the baby was hated by everyone in his village because of what was inside of him. The only people nice to him were the Sandaime Hokage, Gigi, and the owner of a small ramen stand along with owner's daughter. At the age of 4, he was kicked out of the orphanage and attacked, barely surviving. The Hokage found him an hour later in an alley and covered in blood. What surprised everyone though was that the boy's wounds started miraculously healing. Within 3 days the boy was back to normal, so his Gigi put him in an abandoned apartment and let him live there by himself. He gave him a monthly allowance to buy groceries and clothes with, but all the stores overpriced him really badly or just didn't allow him service. The boy still continued on though, happy and wearing a constant mask as always. He cried himself to sleep every night, until one night the tears wouldn't come. All his tears had been shed and there were none left, so the boy went on, virtually friendless. Naruto took a deep breath so he could continue the story. At the age of 6 he enrolled in the Shinobi Academy, saying that he would grow up to be the strongest ninja in the village and become Hokage so that then, everyone would have to acknowledge him. He gained a single friend from the academy, a teacher by the name of Iruka Amino. The man became like an older brother to him as well as someone who would punish him when he did something wrong. The boy often pranked people, trying to get them to acknowledge his existence in any way that he could. So, Iruka-sensei became one of his precious people. Another one came along in the form a girl he met with pink hair. Her self-esteem was extremely low, so the boy tried to brighten her day. She became his crush not long after, and the girl crushed on a different boy. The boy she crushed on was someone that he was jealous of. He came from a rich background, had a family, and was well loved. However, the boy she crushed on had his whole family killed, so he became withdrawn and cold to everyone around him. The boys became rivals. Man, I so wanted to kick Sasuke Tomi's ass for having Sakura hang around him so much and still not like her. Eventually, it became time to graduate and the boy couldn't form a bunshin, a necessary requirement to graduate from the academy, so he failed. But he was offered another chance by an assistant teacher by the name of Mizuki. He said the boy had to sneak into the Hokage's tower and steal the forbidden scroll and learn one jutsu from it and to meet him in the forest a few hours later to prove he could become a shinobi. The boy did as asked, and upon arriving in the forest and learning a jutsu he found out that Mizuki was a traitor and planned to steal the scroll from the boy and get away from the village. Iruka arrived just in time to help the boy and took a Fuma shuriken to the back to save him. Mizuki told the boy why he was so hated and all about the nine-tailed fox. The boy became angry and beat up the traitor and because of it was allowed to become a shinobi. The boy was, naturally, put on a team with his crush and his rival. Their sensei was an extreme pervert who did nothing but read his little orange book all day. Their first day together he gave them a test. There were 2 bells and he said that whoever got them could actually become genin, but one of them wouldn't pass. The boy immediately started fighting his sensei and got his ass handed back to him on a silver platter. Naruto grimaced just remembering. While his crush got knocked out by a weak genjutsu and his rival also got his ass handed to him as well. Naruto felt a smirk settle upon his lips, so the boy tried to sneak and eat his lunch while everyone else was busy. Their sensei caught him and tied the boy up to a pole while the other 2 got to eat. He was extremely hungry as he hadn't eaten that morning, so his stomach constantly growled. Their sensei told his teammates not to feed him or they were kicked off the team. He also said that they would get another shot at the test after lunch. The boy's teammates fed him so he wouldn't be weak and it was revealed that the test was about teamwork, so they passed. Not long after that, the boy had pulled another prank and was running from ninja of the village trying not to get caught. He barely got away and stumbled upon a summoning scroll, but of course, he tripped on it. When he opened his eyes, he found himself in a sewer, and got to talk to the Kyuubi herself. He got back to the real world after a few moments and signed the scroll with some instruction. Of course he practiced summoning, and he got it right eventually, summoning a small fox. After figuring out how the Kitsune clan and Kyuubi were related he went home to sleep. The next day he woke up with these, and Naruto showed the fox his arms, bandages gone from the fight the night before. Still, they were covered in thick, red fox fur. He talked to his Jiji and his sensei, and showed his sensei his summoning skills. The summon took him out of the village and tried to get rid of him. Of course he stayed on and eventually the summon left after telling him that he was allowed to summon him. The boy passed out from exhaustion and woke up in a hospital some time later. Guards were stationed around him, and after beating them, he almost left but an old man stopped him and told him that he wanted him to join his route, which meant that the boy would become an emotionless weapon. If he didn't, the man would reveal to the public the secret about the boy's arms. They would think that he was turning into the Kyuubi and would destroy the village. The boy left and told the Hokage, and he gave him a few scrolls and empty promises of protection. That night, the boy was attacked, and that's how you found me, Naruto said. He could taste the bitterness in his mouth about empty promises from his Jiji. The old man hadn't protected him, and look where he was now. Wow kid, that's a screwed up life you got, but 2 questions. Shoot. Okay. You got the creator of the whole Kitsune race in you. Right? Why not let it out to destroy that village and level it to the ground? Revenge is always a good cure for anything, the fox said as it looked at Naruto. Said boy just glared a whole Zetsune, figuratively of course. After a moment he let out a sigh. He didn't know where this fox came from, but Naruto wasn't like that. Sure, a few harmless pranks as revenge on someone isn't too bad, kinda funny really, but killing people? Because, no matter what, that place still contains a few people precious to me. I couldn't let them die, no matter what. Besides, if I stoop down to their level, I'm just as bad as them. Okay. Matter notwithstanding that you're a fool, the kitsune said as he rolled his eyes. Question 2. Do you know the foxes that you have summoned thus far? Names, anything. I don't really know, Naruto spoke, rolling his shoulders and getting up off the ground. I think the first one was Zelda or something. He's small, black, and likes to be an ass then suck up. Zelda, the kitsune drawled. Yeah, and the other one was Zemer, the one I caught a ride on. He's snobbish but I think that runs in your race. You little. Zetsune shouted angrily as he refrained from whacking the child upside the head. Whatever brat, guess it's time for me to go. Wait a minute, Naruto shouted back. Did you happen to grab my bag of things after you got me? Oh, yeah, it's right here, the kitsune said, untying a medium-sized blue bag with a large scroll on the top of it from his waist. He tossed it to Naruto lazily, who caught it still. But I think some of your stuff got soaked. It was in a puddle of blood when I grabbed it. And with that, the monstrously tall fox vanished in a puff of smoke. Naruto turned from where the fox had been to the bag in his hands. He glanced over it, checking the summoning scroll on top of it for measure before opening the bag. Oh, Kami, Naruto gagged as the smell hit him. It was like he had been carrying dead bodies in the small backpack. He tentatively reached a hand in, grabbing a few things at a time. Most of his pictures were ruined, all except for the one of his whole class. His food scroll, though smeared with blood, was still usable even though he had probably lost over half of his food. The scrolls that he was to give to some guy that Gigi were still in there, okay. He pulled out the scroll that contained all his clothes and gagged when he saw that it was completely trashed. Blood covered the seal and everything, smudging the ink and rendering the whole thing useless. The same was for all of his shuriken and kunai. They stank and any fool worth his brain knew that they were gone for. If he tried to hit an enemy ninja with these, even after washing off the blood, they'd still be able to dodge them with their eyes closed by scent alone. The most important things that made it out were his money, the very little he had in there, and the scrolls he had from his parents. He had tried opening them back in Konaha, but the blood seal wouldn't budge. As it was now, he was scared to look until he could actually sort out this mess that was his life. He didn't need a bigger mess thrown on top of it. There was one last thing he needed to find. He reached up to his forehead. Upon it sat the old forehead protector he had got just weeks ago from Iruka-sensei after beating Mizuki. Carefully, he untied it and put it in his pocket where it would be safe for now. Throwing away the soaked and destroyed items from before, Naruto roped the rest together with some ninja wire he always carried around his pants in case of emergency. After securing them all together, Naruto started to walk aimlessly, hoping that he would be able to get to civilization soon so he didn't starve. That is, if they would even let him anywhere near them in the clothes he was wearing. They were torn to shreds, and he needed new ones, that was for sure. He just hoped that wherever he ended up, they had a good ramen restaurant. Through the woods ran a group of 5 people. Each one of them wore a hunter nin mask with the leaf symbol at the top. Alongside the group ran 2 dogs, each indicating that at least 2 of the group were Inuzuka. The whole group jumped from one branch to another, all in a straight line, with 2 Inuzukas taking the lead. 2 people in the middle unidentified and unimportant, but the very last wore an emotionless mask, one he had been taught from a young age. The group had been ordered by the 3rd Hokage to return the girl, dead or alive. Hunter nin mainly hunted freelance criminals or rogue shinobi. The last of the hunter nin in the group was not under orders from the Hokage, but someone else. But still, minding the orders of the Hokage had been a smart choice, and he would do so until he met up with his true target. The last hunter nin in the group was not actually going to try for the girl they were hunting. No, he was under direct orders from his superior to break off from the group and go for the boy, as soon as he caught a trail. And he had caught the trail around 5 minutes ago. It had been masked by a completely different scent for the most part, but they had stumbled upon a clearing with the boy's scent lingering there. Not even a few days old. His orders were clear: find the trail, and you volunteer for night watch that night. As soon as everyone else is asleep, find the boy and take him hostage for me. Report back immediately with him, or suffer. Anything less than perfection is not tolerated. Understand? I do not care if you kill the whole team with you to get to the boy, just make sure you do. His master was cruel, but he was smart enough to want this boy in his clutches. Power was power, and this boy just happened to contain a lot of it. He would be his before the week was up. Scene break. He finally found it. Civilization. At long last, he was here. Kami, he hoped they had ramen here. The best food in the world, and it could be his if he could find a shop. Naruto stood on a large hill with a small village below him. The village itself had at least a good amount of homes, and the shopping district down there took up over half the village. But comparing it to Konaha, it was extremely small, which saddened him to think of his home. The whole time he had been traveling, at least 3 days, he had stopped himself from thinking about his old place and what it represented to him, but signs of human life brought everything back. Trying to dismiss the thought, Naruto replaced it with another one, ramen. He took off down the hill, the midday sun at his back, reaching the village a minute later with everything tied to his back and a small amount of cash in his wallet, Gama-chan. He walked through the outskirts of the place, mainly the residential district, and proceeded to the shopping part of the village. He spotted small signs of people while in the homes he passed, but when he got near the shops, the idea of the place being slightly abandoned never crossed his mind. The streets were crowded, people everywhere. That at least made him feel better. He passed shops carrying clothes, tools, a small cafe, and then the food places. People pushed against him, some laden with bags, while he tried to find somewhere to eat. Instant ramen couldn't cut it for too long. His stomach hungered for the glory that is true ramen. He walked by a teriyaki shop, noticing that it was virtually empty, before proceeding along. A small tavern, a casino, a dango shop, and a grocery store later, and he still couldn't find anywhere that sold his delicious treat. Finally pushing against the crowd, Naruto gave up the search for food and decided to settle for something else. He passed the teriyaki shop once more before noticing something. A small sign stood near the door advertising some of the specials on food. The widest grin stretched across his face as he looked at the bottom of the list. Miso ramen. Yes, he had finally found it. He walked into the establishment, the door swinging shut behind him, and finally noticed the place. It was medium-sized, a bar counter near the front, and grills and cooks in the back. A few booths rested near the entrance and tables between the bar and booths. He walked to the bar, sitting on one of the stools and waiting for someone to take his order. In front of him was a strip of paper taped down on the counter listing foods and drinks, but he already knew what he wanted, so he didn't bother himself with that. In the meantime, however, he looked around to see what kind of people were there. There were only a few besides him at the bar. A guy passed out at one end with a bottle of sake in hand, and another guy sitting a stools away in a business suit. He was eating quietly, a plate of chicken and rice in front of him as well as a glass of water. Naruto swished around on the stool comically, looking behind him. A few couples sat at the booths, with the tables empty of everyone except one man. The guy was hunched over, a writing pad in hand, and giggling perversely every few seconds as he looked at the couples. Naruto could tell the guy was old, from his long white mane of hair that somewhat reminded him of Choji's dad when he had seen him, but the man was tall, not fat. Naruto turned back around on his seat when he heard a feminine voice ask, "What can I get you, sir?" He took a moment to look the woman over. Long green hair, coming down to her shoulders and a bit on the skinny side. Her eyes were coal black and looking at his clothes with obvious disdain. She looked to be in her early 20s. 3 bowls of miso ramen, please?" he begged of her, dying for his food to arrive soon. "It will just take a few minutes, would you like anything to drink with that?" Naruto grimaced down at the small menu, trying to find something suitable. Sake, and more sake. Is that all they serve to drink here? He didn't feel particularly like getting drunk today, but thought that it would be nice to have something to drink other than the water he'd been drinking from rivers and the like that he came across. A small bottle of sake, please?" "I'm sorry, but we don't serve alcohol to minors," she told him in an overly sweet tone. Okay, this was ticking him off. The only damn thing to drink on the menu was sake. What else was he supposed to drink? It was at that moment he'd remembered what a tavern owner told a couple of just graduated genin when he still lived in Konaha. Old enough to kill or be killed, old enough to drink, have, or anything else within the law, that's what I say. "I'm a shinobi, I think you can make an exception," he told her as he made a face at her. This woman just loved to try and tick him off already. She automatically hated his clothes, looked at him like she thought he was some street orphan, and then tried to refuse him a drink. What the hell? I don't see you wearing a forehead symbol like a ninja should. I don't even see your forehead protector at all, she told him as she rolled her eyes, but they flashed red when Naruto pulled his forehead protector out of his pocket with a smirk. Instead of replying, she gritted out, "Your order will be done in a few minutes, sir." Waiting for her to take his order back to the chefs, and then checking to make sure no one was watching him, Naruto pulled out the scroll from his mother. He had looked at it days ago, but still felt the need to look at her comforting words. "Dear Naruto, I need to make this quick. Kyuubi is fast approaching and I and your father are writing this in his office as we get ready to fight the beast. I have been told that the chances are that I wouldn't even survive giving birth to you, but I pulled through long enough. In exactly 10 minutes we will be needed on the battlefield to do whatever we can to make sure our home is not destroyed, and for that reason alone, I want you to know I love you. Minato and I both know we will not survive, and he thinks that the village will hold you precious for holding the tailed beast back from destroying Konaha. He is too much of a dreamer and I doubt that is what will truly happen. You may be hated, ostracized, everything else that makes me not want to sacrifice our whole family for this ordeal, but I know what I must do. I know I will be no more, so I leave you with few things. Stored along with this are the scrolls containing my chakra chains, as well as a skull on our family line. It was something I used to use to try and find those of my family still alive after the destruction of Uzushigakure. The last 3 things I give you are my journal, as well as a book your godfather wrote. The title of it is, The Tales of a Gutsy Ninja, and it is your namesake. The very last thing I give you is a mother's love. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. No matter what, I love you, remember this. Your mother, Kushina Uzumaki, red-hot-blooded Hibanaru. Even after reading it several times, he could still feel tears leaking at the corners of his eyes. He pushed them back, thinking to himself, it doesn't matter, I will not cry. No matter what. He was interrupted by his internal rant 2 minutes later when the waiter came back, sliding a small bottle of chilled sake in front of him. Here's your drink, sir. The food will just be another 5 minutes, she said as she gazed at anything but the shinobi in front of her. Naruto looked up at her inquisitively, before grabbing the bottle of sake and a bit of it into the saucer the waitress had deposited beside the bottle. What's your problem, lady? Naruto had asked her with a frown on his face. He took a sip of the sake and grimaced at the bitter and strong taste in his mouth. He swallowed, grimacing even further at the burn in his throat. The woman finally looked at him, and he glared right back at her. What's it to ya, brat? She had retorted right back to him. Just tired of seeing an old lady glaring at me. Naruto had barely gotten to finish his confession to her before she punched him in the head, knocking him out of his seat. She stood there in the same position a few moments later, fist extended and breath coming hard, as Naruto got back up and in his seat, chugging the rest of the sake in his saucer. Ha, as if that hurt. Sakura-chan hit me every day, and compared to hers, yours was like a love tap, Naruto said, glaring as the sake slid down his throat. What he'd said was true, at least to him. Sakura could damn well hit hard, and getting hit by that every day. Naruto figured that alone raised his tolerance for pain to really high levels. By this point, everyone in the restaurant was looking at the blonde kid as he goaded the waitress on, everyone there expecting the kid to get the beat down of his life. One white-haired Sanin looked at the boy in amazement as he was punched and had got right back up, acting as if it was nothing. He watched from the crowd as well, thinking the boy would get pummeled like the white-haired man usually did. That idea was stopped as the green-haired waitress laughed and leaned onto the counter in front of the blonde boy. Hey kid, that's pretty damn funny and impressive. Man, I thought you'd be out cold. Most men usually are after a punch like that, she said after coming down from her laugh. What's your name, Gaki? Naruto Uzumaki, he practically screamed. Name's Kin Haganu, she told the boy, before grabbing the bottle of sake in front of them and taking a gulp from it. The white-haired man behind the twitched, the name of the boy sounding extremely familiar. He looked just like someone he knew, but the effects of drinking several bottles of sake had gotten to him, and he couldn't quite place it. Then one word rang loud and clear in his mind that had the affect of making his thoughts running around like him from a crowd of angry women. Uzumaki. Shit, it's their kid. What the hell is the Gaki doing out of the village? He might be on a mission, but wouldn't he be wearing his Hite? Maybe it's an infiltration mission? Nah, then he wouldn't be flashing his headband just for some sake. So if it's not that, and I seriously doubt it is because I don't feel any other powerful chakra sources nearby signifying teammates, why is he here? Damn it Gaki, without even talking to me you cause issues. Oh well, I need to leave in about a few days or so to reach Konaha, but in the meantime I'll keep an eye on him. Outwardly, he was calm. The only thing giving him away was the grip he had on the table and the sweat coming from his forehead. Inwardly, however, he was a mess. His godson was outside of Konaha's protection and he wasn't informed? What the hell was Sarutobi-sensei thinking? While Jiraiya was seething, Naruto and Kin had started talking, eventually winding down to show that they both shared some of the same qualities. They were both somewhat blunt. Both were talkative and loud and obnoxious when need be. Lastly, they were both protective of people near them. Kid, I like you, she admitted after another round of laughter and gulping of sake. I want you to come back here at 10. Meet up with me for a night on the town. The sake bottle had winded down, the food arriving and Naruto eating it with gusto. The 3 bowls had disappeared into his drunken stomach in a matter of moments. Surprisingly, they were not on the floor after Naruto's binge. Kin had told him that if he didn't throw them up, then they were on the house. Okay, he slurred, reminding himself of it but finding it hard to concentrate. Here, lightweight. It's a reminder to be back here later, so make sure you read it, she said as she slipped the piece of paper into his hand. There is a small motel that can take care of you for the night, and it's not too run down or a rat hole. It's just around the corner. You should be okay there. By the time you come get me, make sure you've rested, showered, and wore off the alcohol. I don't need to run around with a pissed shinobi with a hangover. MK, Naruto slurred once more, not really registering the only tipsy in front of him. You've got at least 6 hours to nap, and then 1.5 more to get ready and be here, she explained before telling him, now get lost kid. I got a job to do. Naruto looked at her with clouded eyes before he wobbled off of his chair and stumbled to the door of the restaurant. He pushed the door open, not noticing the green-haired girl he'd been talking to walk over to the perverted man with white hair. So, why were you paying so much attention to the blonde, Jiraiya? She asked, breaking the man of his mind-induced haze. You should know, Kin. After all, you know almost everything I know intel-wise, he retorted right back at her. There has never been any harm just verifying information. So yep, and you want me to? Yep. Wow, I almost feel sorry for the kid. Too bad. He was pretty damn nice to me. Even if he was drunk halfway through. With that, both Kin and Jiraiya vacated their seats. One was off to spy on Blondie and adjust another meeting with a contact, while the other was preparing to do something she had become useful for her entire life. Gaining knowledge, Naruto stood in front of the mirror, trying to see if he looked decent enough. Earlier had been horrible, and he could barely remember a thing about it. Flashback. Naruto stumbled down the street, just having left the restaurant, and was trying to look for the nearest motel. Kin had told him where one was, but he had already forgot. The only reason he had remembered to look for a place to sleep in general was because some small part of his brain retained that much common sense. Every few seconds or so, his brain would find a new distraction to keep it entertained. One such thing was the people he kept bumping into on the streets. His steps would curve from the main part of the road and he would start running into people, letting out a small laugh, and then bounding down the streets, letting out little giggles. Haha, he sounded like Kakashi-sensei. That thought alone just opened the floodgates of his brain and he tried to keep from crying. Oh, how he missed Kakashi-sensei and his tardy and perverted ways. Oh, how he missed Sasuke Teme and his broody, stick-up-the-ass nature. He even missed Sakura-chan and her banshee, screaming warsong, ways. Oh, how he missed them all. Iruka with his older brother ways and giant screaming head. That thought caused him to giggle again, effectively stopping the almost reduced to tears state he was in. Then the thought popped into his head once more. Find the motel so we can get some rest for tonight. This thought made him come to a sudden stop, and he regretted it when someone bumped into him with a shout of, "Watch where you're going, kid." The man just kept walking past him, grumbling to himself while Naruto continued on his way, finally spotting the motel on the street corner. He opened the door, the bell above jingling as he walked in. Hello. Naruto greeted the manager of the place. "Hey, kid," the man greeted him. "You want a room for the night?" "Yep, I'll put you up in room 69 and you can pay when you're ready to check out, okay?" Naruto enthusiastically nodded his consent and the man tossed him a key. As Naruto reached out to catch it, a small slip of paper fell from his hand. "What's this?" Naruto asked himself, bending down to pick up the paper and getting hit in the head by the key. Ow! Naruto rubbed his head, finally reaching down and grabbing both the key and the note. He put both of them in his pocket, forgetting about them as soon as he did. "What's the room number again?" 69, the man sighed, exasperated at the drunk blonde. "Okay." Naruto screamed before giggling pervertedly and practically skipping out of the building. The man sighed once more before reaching under his desk and pulling out a very familiar orange book. "It's going to be a long night, I can already tell." Outside the main building stood Naruto, preparing to walk to his room. He took 2 steps before his vision started shaking. Suddenly the green plants beside the building were splattered in a different color. A tan color with chunks of other different colored things in it, and Naruto on his hands and knees beside it, heaving out his guts. "Oh, I feel woozy," he slurred before vomiting out the rest of his stomach's contents. Damn, that sake and ramen didn't taste nearly as good coming up as it did going down. He stood there, bent over and dry heaving for a few more moments before finally straightening up and wiping the bit of vomit off of his chin and lips. Acting as if nothing had happened, he started on the short walk to his room. He counted the numbers down until he got to his room, sobered up a bit from his now empty stomach. Finally finding the room, he put the key into the lock and turned it, opening the door and stepping into the room. The lights were off, and not being able to see anything, he stumbled around for a minute trying to find the light switch. After finally finding it, he flipped on the lights, and shaded his eyes from the bright light immediately flooding the room. Good God, that made him feel even worse. Letting his eyes adjust, he scanned the small room, noting the door to a bathroom, a king-sized bed, and a nightstand a foot away from the bed. Ready to just pass out, he dumped his bundle of things down onto the floor carelessly and rifled through his pockets to put everything on the nightstand. The key, the note, and a small book entitled, The Tale of a Gutsy Ninja, ended up there before Naruto threw off his pants and curled up into the soft bed, not bothering to shut off the lights before he passed out from exhaustion. Flashback end. Because of it all, he had woken up with just enough time to get ready. He had hopped in the shower, gotten dressed, and debated about trying to find a decent clothing shop. He didn't have much money, and not more than a few minutes to get to the restaurant to pick up Kin, so he tried to decide what to do. On one hand, he could get some clothes to look at least okay, but then he would be late to pick her up. On the other hand, he could pick her up and then have her show him a decent clothing shop to get a pair of clothes at. Oh well, option 2 sounded a bit better. She was showing him around the town after all. It's not like this was a date or anything. After running into his room and grabbing Gama-chan, his key, and the book, soon after safely tucked into his shuriken pouch, he ran out the door to go meet the woman at the nearby restaurant. The place was only a few blocks away, luckily enough, and he got there within 5 minutes. He pushed open the door to the teriyaki restaurant and walked up to the counter, absently noting that there was no customers there at the moment, except for a few now exiting through the door. Behind the counter was one male, easily in his mid-50s, counting out money on the counter. "Hey, old man, is Kin here?" Naruto asked, his head still throbbing. The man looked up at Naruto for a moment before going back to counting out his money. "She's in the back. Her shift ends in 2 minutes, so I'll send her out here in a moment. Oh, and if you call me an old man again, I'll kick your ass from here to Suna." Naruto looked ready to reply for a moment, his mouth open, but he wisely shut it and said nothing back. Instead, he tapped his foot impatiently while the man finished with his money, and scooped it out into a burlap bag before putting a drawstring around it. "There, now, listen here young man, and listen good," the man said as he held the money bag in hand and leaned onto the counter. "If I find out you hurt Kin in any way, shape or form, I will personally make sure I find a nice unmarked grave to bury you in. That girl is like a daughter to me, and I'd sooner slit my own throat, or yours, than let her get hurt. You hear me?" The old man gave Naruto a sharp pointed look, and before Naruto could say anything in his defense, a voice rang out from the back. "Damn it, Nitin! What did I tell you about unnecessarily threatening people? He's just a kid, ya know? It's not like it's a date or anything. He just needed someone to show him around, and I thought myself best to do so. At that point, Kin appeared from the back, her waitress uniform gone and in its place a black silk shirt, faded jeans, and a white belt. Besides, he's too young for my taste. And he needs some new clothes, and who best to help him shop for them than me? Instead of arguing back at her, Nitin took his sack of money and headed to the back of the restaurant, mumbling about not being able to have any fun anymore. Kin turned back to Naruto and gave him a smile before walking out from behind the counter. I wasn't joking about the new clothes. That's the first thing we're looking for. After that, I can show you around, and then we'll get something to eat, deal? Sure, I guess, Naruto said sheepishly, rubbing the back of his head as the green-haired woman started to head out from the restaurant. Hey, can you at least tell me something about you? I don't really know anything about you besides the fact that you like to get minors drunk and can pack a pretty hard punch. Okay, how about this? I ask you a question, and you answer it truthfully. Then you can ask me a question, and I'll do the same. Nothing too personal though. Okay, came Naruto's enthusiastic reply. He was finally making some new friends. What are your two favorite colors? Her question seemed random, but it was meant that way for a reason. She was setting the bar with the first question and she knew this. She didn't want the kid asking extremely personal questions right off the bat, and she didn't want to scare him away by doing the same to him. It was a purely tactical maneuver on her part, at least she thought so. Naruto saw it as nothing more than a friend wanting to know what his favorite colors were. Orange is my first favorite color, I guess. Red is my favorite after that though. Before he had a chance to ask her a question, she laughed. Orange, a ninja's favorite color? Dear Kami kid, that'll get you killed one day. With as much of it as you wear, it's a surprise you're not already dead. Ha ha ha, her laughter broke down into chuckles, before she saw hurt flash through the boy's eyes. But seriously, orange? Why? What is with the orange jumpsuit anyway? Orange makes me stand out. Why wear clothes that make me look like all the other ninja? It just means that I'd be lost in another crowd, he responded, ignoring the question about his jumpsuit. He didn't feel like talking about why he wore it anyway. Now, it's my turn to ask a question. What are your favorite colors? Well damn, she thought to herself. I was hoping to at least get a few more answers with a trick or two. After a minute of thinking, she decided it would be harmless to tell the boy her favorite colors. He couldn't really use them against her or anything, could he? I guess my favorite color is purple. After that, green. Now, my question to you is this. Do you prefer baggy clothes or tight ones? Because we're at the clothing shop and there isn't any way in hell I'm letting you choose your outfit with the atrocious fashion sense you have. Naruto looked up, realizing what she said was partly true. They were standing in front of a small store called Takato's Clothes and Accessories, Wonder Emporium. The other part of him having no fashion sense was so wrong, at least in his mind. I do so have some fashion sense. Orange is the coolest color ever. He decided to voice his opinion, gaining a snort in response. Kid, you are so wrong, on so many levels. Number 1. You are wearing a kill me orange jumpsuit, which I might add, is almost in tatters. And 2. It is orange. No ninja would ever wear something like that. Didn't your sensei teach you anything? Naruto turned away from the woman, ignoring her as he walked into the shop. What she had said had brought so much to the surface. His thoughts were in turmoil, raging against each other. She's right. What kind of ninja wears orange? But, it's not my fault. It's all they would sell me. It was the only thing that I could afford. It was at that point that a dark whisper entered Naruto's mind in the voice of Kyuubi. Kid, it's their fault, not yours. They wanted you dead. They didn't just make the only outfit you could wear that way for any reason other than your death. They painted a bright target on you saying, kill me, kill me. You need to understand that, kid. They tried to kill you and then make you leave. Your own Hokage could do nothing to stop it, nor did he. Was he there to protect you? Your own sensei taught you nothing. Do you think that was nothing but a mistake on his part, or merely another way of getting you killed? Naruto stood there in front of the half-opened door, shell-shocked at what he had just heard. Was it true? Did everyone there hate him? Even Jiji and Kakashi-sensei? No, he shook his head fiercely, there is no way they would do that to me. The fox was oddly silent, knowing nothing she did could combat the fierceness of Naruto's bull-headed nature. She may not be able to convince him to forget everyone at that Kami-forsaken hellhole, but she would make sure that he never saw that village again unless it was in ashes and that Naruto would be safe. He was her kid after all. "Kid, you okay?" came Kin's voice as she grabbed his shoulder. "You just froze up there." "I'm fine," Naruto cut in an icy voice, glaring at the offending appendage resting on his shoulder. "Look here, shithead. I don't give a hell what you think. You have no reason to be mad at me, and if you do, I'm sorry. If not, then I guess it would be time for me to go. I'm not here to be your punching bag, kid. I'm here to help you." Her tone was an angered one, only reserved for when she got real mad. Naruto's demeanor instantly changed. He knew he shouldn't have treated her that way. She was one of the only people outside of the village that he could trust so far, and his only friend out here. "I'm sorry," he told her in a somber tone. "Just some of the stuff you said really got to me. I know you didn't deserve my anger, but I just wanted to let some of it out." "Whatever, kid," she said as she walked past him into the shop and then turned around and looked him in the eye. "But if you get that angry again, you better not pull this shit again, okay? I've got a training ground behind my house and you can go back there and go wild to your heart's content, but you aren't going wild on me. Clear, Crystal?" Naruto replied cheekily, as a smirk fell on Kin's lips. "But why do you have a training ground? Are you a ninja or something?" "Nah, she tutted, waving a finger in front of his face. "You never answered my question, so I don't have to answer yours." She stuck her tongue out at him. "Okay, fine, I prefer baggy clothes. Now why do you have a training ground?" Naruto asked, exasperated. "I'll tell you that after we get your clothes, okay?" Naruto pouted at her, and she just turned her nose up at it. "Kid, that stuff don't work on me. I practically invented it," she said with a laugh. Fine. Now can we hurry up already and get the clothes?" Kin turned her back to him and walked up to the counter to see a man with his nose in a book. He looked up at them. "Hello. Welcome to Takato's Clothes and Accessories. I'm Takato. How may I help you two this evening?" "Yes, my friend here needs some new clothes. Preferably baggy, durable, and just a little orange," Kin told him as she gave a wink to Naruto, who noticeably brightened at the word orange. "Well, we do have plenty of baggy and durable clothes. Not much orange though, as no one asks for it, but I think we can get you something." The man walked out from behind the counter and Naruto got a good look at him. He was short, just a little bit taller than Naruto, and stout, with low-cut brown hair and glasses. His clothes consisted of loose green shorts and a tight brown shirt, showing off bodybuilder muscles. He led them over to a wall containing slots with different colored clothes in each one. "This is the most we can do for here, but there are other choices if you want to look for more." Kin walked up to the wall and felt some of the clothes linings for a moment before turning back to the man. I don't think these are durable enough. He's actually training with me, and these things would be destroyed in moments." Naruto had a confused look on his face as he glanced between the two. The clothes looked durable enough to him. Takato wizened up after a few seconds of thought, then his face brightened up. "Ah yes, we do have some clothes in the back. They are specially durable and can last for a good long time. Now, come on," he said as he led them to a door behind the counter and opened it with a key. He held it open for a few moments, motioning them through. "I'll just leave you two to it, then." Naruto and Kin walked into the back room, and Naruto's eyes widened to instant proportions. Hanging on walls and shelves, from floor to ceiling, were mesh clothes, cloaks, and all of the sort. Weapons hung from random places in an orderly fashion, covering up the rest of the space not occupied by clothes. Kin turned to Naruto, a serious glint in her eye. "Naruto, I need to tell you this here and now. Do not, I repeat, do not, tell anyone what you see here today. Takato has this place for most passing ninja or samurai in need of clothes. He knows me and is a close friend, but if this town were to get raided, he'd be screwed if not for this place." Naruto nodded, still confused. "But why is it back here? What's so special about it?" Kin just rolled her eyes. If this town was raided, he'd be able to safely fit a bunch of people in here. And for the reason that he once had all this stuff in with the regular clothes, but had little kids buying knives and swords which they couldn't handle. A kid died for that reason, and he couldn't live too well with the guilt, so he moved it all back here. The only way for him to let anyone back in here is if they use the word training, or if they are a ninja, show their headbands. Samurai, underage ones of course, had to tell him the first 3 of their rules of honor. Naruto immediately brightened up. So he's a samurai? Nope, she answered, shaking her head. He just got a bit of training from one in exchange for supplies. Now, why don't you browse around, and I'll try to find something that would look good on you, okay? Naruto nodded his head and started to browse, looking at the different weapons. Kunai, shuriken, senbon, a huge zanbatsu, even plain katanas. He looked through shelf to shelf, things getting cooler and cooler, even more expensive as he went. Weapons got fancier, sharper even, as new types of weapons were added to their ranks. Finally, Naruto came to the back wall, looking at the last 10 weapons on display. He could hear Kin over by another wall, adding clothes together for matching sets. Naruto looked at the weapons individually, them getting more awesome as he went on. The first was a katana, the sheath a shiny red color with a picture of a black moon and sun on it. It was kept a polished color, encased in a display case with the katana itself poking out about halfway. The katana was the best in Naruto's mind. It was a wicked black color, edges looking sharper than an anbu's. It was nondescript after that, the only other discrepancy being a blood-red kanji at the base of it, reading, habanero. Its hilt was wrapped in red and black leather. Looks like you found my most treasured weapons, a voice spoke up behind Naruto, startling him and making him jump. He looked bend him to see Takato standing there, pushing his black-rimmed glasses up his nose and setting his elbow on the arm folded across his chest. In his hand was a jacket. Every one of these swords is precious and important to me, some of their values as low as dirt to others, and some as high as a mountain. But every last one has much value in them, sentimental value to me. Naruto looked back at the swords, noticing that one on the end was chipped, and looked like a huge needle. One beside it was broken in half, yet still pearly white. What's so special about them? Naruto asked the shop owner. The owner glanced from one to the other, finally pointing to the big needle. That right there was owned by one of the 7 swordsmen of the Hidden Mist. A woman once brought it into here saying she wanted to sell it. I was astounded at that, having researched the swords themselves for years. I bought it, and a few weeks later, after extensive travel, studied the sword at the dead swordsman's grave. His sword there was a fake. Mine was the real one. Takato pointed to the one broke in half. That was brought in by a very famous man, during a very bad time. During the Third Great Ninja War, a skirmish broke out near here. Some survivors headed home and went to the battlefield to collect any weapons they had left lying around. I came across a sword, very beautiful, but broken, with half of it missing. The sword's owner was half dead, so I brought him back to my house and took care of him. A few weeks later, he woke up and told me his name. Kakashi Hitaki. He thanked me for my troubles and offered me his sword as payment. I accepted, but told him that if he ever wanted it back, to come here and it will be his. I later found out that the sword was the blade of the legendary White Fang of Konaha. I have not seen Kakashi since, but I still keep the weapon prepped, just in case. Takato turned his eyes to the katana Naruto had been looking at, and Naruto followed his gaze. That one there was ordered specially by a very important man, to the love of his life. The man's wife and himself were very close to me, and very important. Both saved my life on numerous occasions. A week before the sword was finished though, both he and his wife were killed. You do look somewhat like that man though. Who was it? Naruto asked in awe as he saw the sword in a new light. That, I cannot tell you. I will say this though. The man's wife was called the hot-blooded Banero. Naruto finished for him, shock running through his veins at finally recognizing the name. Also known as Kushina Uzumaki. You knew her, the man asked, shocked as he turned his gaze to Naruto. But you are too young, she died at least 13 years ago. Naruto glanced around for a moment, before fishing a scroll out of his back pocket. I need you to swear you won't tell anybody about this. The man nodded. I swear it on my life. After all, my life is mainly composed of secrets. Naruto handed the man the scroll, knowing he could trust him. The man said he knew both his mother and his father. And he needed to know about them both, otherwise it might drive him insane. They were his damn parents and he had almost no information on them. Takato's eyes widened in shock as they scanned the page in his hands, and his eyes just kept widening, almost to epic proportions. Naruto would have found it funny and laughed if the air wasn't so thick with emotions. After all, it's not every day you found out your dead friends actually had a son. Takato's eyes blurred over with tears as he read the last few lines. The very last thing I give you is a mother's love. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. No matter what, I love you. Remember this. Your mother, Kushina Uzumaki, red-hot-blooded habanero. Well, Naruto, let me tell you this, Takato said as he rolled the scroll shut and handed it to said boy. You had the best parents in the world. Nobody could have done better, and I bet that no matter what, they're proud of you. Thanks, Naruto replied, putting the scroll back in his only pocket. That means a lot to me coming from a friend of theirs. Takato nodded, then bent over to the display case and pulled out a key. He put the key in the slot, hands trembling as he lifted up the glass casing. It had been so long since he had taken a sword out of here to give away that he felt weird. He picked up the polished black and red katana as he moved to shut the case. Before he did though, he heard Kin behind him and Naruto. Wow, old man, I've never even seen you take anything out of here. Is Naruto buying a new weapon? Nope, the shop owner replied as he pulled the sword out and finally shut the case, locking it. I'm giving it to him. You don't have to do that for me. Naruto replied, shock evident in his voice at what Takato was doing. Yes, I do. This thing is practically your birthright, Naruto. I know for a fact that your parents would have wanted you to have it. Besides, if I didn't, it would just sit back here and collect dust. I'm sorry, but I really can't accept this. I don't even know the first thing about wielding a sword anyway. Then I guess we'll just get someone to teach then, I can? Takato told the boy and winked at the mentioned girl. He turned to Naruto and pressed the sword into his hands, wrapping his fingers around it. But Kin bent down to Naruto's ear. Look kid, just take the dang sword. I can send a letter to my friend who's a great swordsman and he'll teach you everything you need to know. Hell, until he gets here I can teach you some basics, even a style or two. What do you say kid? In reply, Naruto just hugged Kin, then leapt up and gave Takato a big hug as well. When he fell to the floor, he gave them both a wide grin. Thank you both, so much. This really means a lot to me. Yeah, it don't matter. As soon as you get back from being a trained swordsman though, you'll have to spar me and show just how good you get with that, Takato said, giving Naruto a smile in return. Okay. Enough with the sappy moments, people, they give me headaches, Kin replied, mostly joking. Kid, I've got you some clothes right here. I think it looks pretty good, but if not, we'll find you something else. Now go try them on. She tossed the clothes to him and then pointed to a corner of the room that was mostly a dressing room, workroom. Takato threw Naruto the jacket from his hand and Naruto ran over there, eager to look at his new clothes, and Kin turned back to Takato. Okay, spill. Why did you give the kid that sword? I remember you turning down millions of ryo for one of these swords and you just happened to give one to a kid that just so happens to pass through. What's going on? Kin asked, giving him the evil eye and crossing her arms over her chest. It's the kid's birthright to wield that sword. At one point or another it would have gotten to him anyway, Takato replied, and seeing her open her mouth once more, he gave her another answer. It's not my place to tell you who either of his parents are. You probably wouldn't know them anyway, except by name. Both of his parents though were my friends, and both had plenty of enemies. I don't need word getting out about him, especially with you having that spy network. Anybody finds out, and he'd be dead in a week, hunted by almost every one of the 5 great nations. He's that important? Kin asked, odd, and ignoring the jab at her having a loud mouth and her spy network. Yep, that important and more, Takato said, then waved a hand at her when he saw Naruto exit the dressing room. And here he is. Looking good, kid. Naruto looked down at the outfit. It consisted over a wire mesh undershirt with orange lining. His short-sleeved jacket was unzipped and was black, a red cross in the middle of it with an orange kanji. The orange edge of the wire mesh peeked out from his jacket, giving the jacket an orange-colored edge on the sleeves. Over it he wore a simple, black, half-zipped and high-collared cloak that went down to his shins. On his legs he wore baggy black pants with an orange line going down each side. His feet were covered by red ninja sandals. On his back, peeking out from under the cloak was the katana. Its handle was by the right side of his head. Yeah, Naruto said, scratching the back of his head. It feels really comfy and there isn't much orange, but I think it's pretty cool. Well, alright then, Takato's voice resonated through the large back room as he clapped his hands together. How about we bring you on up front and get you ready to go? Okay, Takato, Naruto said as he smiled and went back to grab his old outfit. He returned a minute later moving everything from his old orange jumpsuit into his new outfit. Gama-chan, his mother's scroll, the key to his motel, and the tale of the gutsy ninja. What do I do with my old clothes? Here, Takato said as he grabbed them with as very few fingers as possible and led them up front. Hey kid, how much money you got? Naruto pulled out Gama-chan and counted it off to the store owner. Not much, enough for probably this and one more outfit just like it. I'll give you a deal, Naruto, Takato replied, opening up the door to the front. I'll toss in 3 more outfits just like it, and make it all for free, if you come into my shop and work here until you have to leave. Besides, that swordsman won't be here for another week at least, depending on how far away he is, and I doubt Kin would want you hanging all over her during that time. She still has to work after all, and you'd end up just hanging out here with me until she gets off every day. You get lucky and I might even introduce you to some of the young ladies around town. He gave Naruto a wink for good measure and Kin just smacked him over the head, muttering, pervert. Naruto flushed at what Takato had implied, but then thought over his offer. It seemed to be a pretty good deal. Takato wouldn't just be handing the clothes out for free, which Naruto knew he couldn't accept. Besides, the guy was right. He would be hanging out here a lot anyway. He might as well ACC pet it. Short Takato, that sounds good to me, Naruto said, giving him another blinding smile. Well, alright then, Takato replied, returning Naruto's smile and holding out his hand. They both shook hands before saying goodbye. Takato turned to Kin, gave her a kiss on the cheek, and ran away before she could hit him again. Goodbye. Takato waved in as they walked out the door, but not before Naruto saw the name of the book he had been reading. Icha Icha Paradise, Volume 4 by Jiraiya. That name sounds familiar, was Naruto's last thought before both him and Kin exited the shop. One flustered and one happy, one from receiving a kiss on the cheek and the other from gaining a new friend. Wow, kid, you must be really special. Takato never gives anyone discounts or anything for free, especially not to someone he just met a few minutes before. So, what gives? Kin asked Naruto as they made their way down the street looking for something to eat. Night had already fallen and the late-night businesses had already sprung up. Restaurants and outdoor cafes had twinkling lights out, lighting the path of the friends currently walking down the street. Few people were out, some wandering down the streets with friends or couples, and some sitting down at cafes talking. Naruto took a moment to consider what he should tell her. Kin was a friend, but he didn't want too many people knowing his secrets yet. Takato had been special. He had already known both of his parents and had even proved it by the sword he had gave him. I don't know, Naruto said hesitantly. It's kind of personal and I don't want to talk about it. Okay, kid, whatever. Hey, weren't we still playing that game? Kin asked him as she turned to look at some of the stores they passed by. Yeah, and if I recall, it's my turn. Naruto let a smirk play on the edge of his lips. Hey, no fair. My question was about your clothes, and therefore does not relate to this game, Kin pouted. Nah, you almost directly specified that it does relate to the game before we entered Takato's. It's my turn. No, it's mine. It's mine. Kin chose that moment to turn the puppy dog eyes on him, and after a few seconds, Naruto relented. Okay then. Now, why did he give you the sword for free? I thought you said no personal questions? Fine, she muttered, throwing her arms up. What's your favorite thing to do? Train, although I do like to prank people a lot. What's yours? Naruto had his arms behind his head in a relaxed gesture, remembering some of his past pranks. Mostly, I like to draw and see my brother. That's pretty cool, I guess, Naruto said before Kin pointed out a small outdoor cafe that was surrounded by flowers. They walked the small trail over to it before going inside. It had 3 doors leading to tables arranged outside, and a few tables inside, mostly for on extremely hot days. Hello, Kin greeted the waitress. Can we get a table for 2 outside please? The waitress nodded and led them out one of the doors and to a table outside with flowers arranged in the middle of it and an umbrella over it. The waitress handed them both a menu. I'll just take your drinks. Now, what will it be? She asked them, to which they replied for a water and a lemonade. She nodded and walked away. Naruto turned to Kin to see her setting her elbows on the table and lacing her fingers in front of her face. Now, it would be my turn to ask you a question, Naruto. She had a small smile on her face. Go ahead. When did you become a nuke nin? She asked, to which Naruto sputtered. Shit. What do I tell her? I can't just lie. Dear Kami. Wait, how could she tell? I'm pretty sure. No, I know for a fact that I've never even hinted to being a missing nin. Kin looked on as Naruto's face went through a wide variety of emotions. Panic, confusion, and then confirmation. You don't have to tell me if you don't want to. I would just prefer to know about harboring someone I shouldn't be. No, that didn't come out right. I just want to know if you've got any hunter nin after you as of right now. Naruto, finally deciding that she at least deserved the edited version, told her, I really don't know. He shrugged and continued on. All I can say is that I was chased out of my village for something I had no control over, and was attacked. Cake killed some of them, but barely got away when I was stabbed in my chest. It was only about a week or so ago. Now, how did you know? Kid, I've seen plenty of missing nin. Many times, any Konaha missing nin come through this town on their way out of fire country. All I had to do was look at the signs. You show up, half dead with your clothes in shreds. You have almost no money, no anything except for a small bundle. It looked like you either went on a failed mission or went nuke. From there I was able to notice you had no teammates with you, and when you accepted the idea of my friend training you, it became pretty clear to me. And, you don't care? Naruto asked, hesitant. Kami no, she said with an airy chuckle. I've met too many nuke nin to really give a shit if they go missing or not. It's their choice, they have to live with the consequences, not me. In fact, the friend I plan on having train you is a missing nin. Who is this friend you keep talking about? Naruto asked, but was stopped a second later as the waitress appeared with their drinks. She took their orders of food and left the couple sitting there as Kin thought about how much information to divulge to her friend's soon-to-be student. Well, his name is Minori Mikoto. He is from Kirigakure during the bloodline purges. Other than that, all I know is that he was apprenticed to a very powerful swordsman at a young age, and that he is the very last of his clan. She left out some of the parts on who he was apprenticed to, and that Minori had issues. No need to scare the kid just yet, is there? What's his bloodline do? Naruto asked, cocking a head to the side. Kin said, taking a sip of her drink. It's not that special unless you have a lot of patience with it. He told me that he never really practiced it for years back in Kirigakure, afraid that he would be seen and killed for it. When he left, however, he started training it as well as taking up swordsmanship. As of right now, he's one of the strongest ninja out there. He just makes sure that very few people know that. That never really answered my question though. Naruto told her. Oh, well, I'll tell you about it sometime later on in private. It's something that I don't even want you knowing about unless he says he'll take you on as an apprentice. Okay. Naruto balked, wondering if he could even be trained by this guy. Has he had any apprentices before this? Two that I'm aware of, she said, knowing this was pressing her limit on how much needed to be revealed. Twins that he found after he left his master. Wow, Naruto sat there stunned. Kid, that's not the half of it. Chances are that you'll end up getting some of the story from Minori at one point or another. As for him training you, that's not much of a problem. He's been wanting to teach someone his own kenjutsu style, and you're a willing participant. He'll train you, no sweat. After that, the conversation turned light, the questioning game going back on with them teasing each other occasionally with an odd question or two that were mostly light, humorous ones. Their food eventually arrived and they ate. Naruto paid the bill with all of the cash from Gama-chan, and he walked Kin home before retiring back to his motel. Scene break. The only sound in the whole room was the shuffling of pages as Naruto turned from one page to the next in his book. He was particularly entranced by the book as he and the main character both shared the same names, and in some parts, had some of the same stuff happen to each other. The only difference was that the main character from the book wasn't booted out from his hometown. He sighed after finishing the third chapter and set the book on the bedside table before shutting off the lights and preparing for bed, even though he had slept merely hours before. His arms were folded behind his head as he turned his tired eyes to the ceiling, tracing patterns across it to prevent the one thought entering his mind that he didn't want to. I wonder what's going on in Konaha. Scene break. Same time, Konaha, Hokage's office. Hiruzen Sarutobi sat at his desk as he leaned back, inhaling from his pipe, and looked up at the night sky. His confusing thoughts flew around his head. Is Naruto okay? Jiraiya should have been here already. What is wrong? Was what I did right? Should I have made it for Naruto to stay, or was I right in making sure he left, so that he could at least lead a happy life? Did I truly do this for him, or was it to appease the council? He knew that either way, he had done was done, and nothing could change that. His eyes drifted over the stars, seemingly looking for something that he could not spot. They drifted back down after a few moments and took in all of Konaha, the village hidden in the leaves, the place where every person here was like family to him. And he would give his life, gladly, to protect his family. With that in mind, he made a decision. Turning back to his desk, he pulled out an empty scroll, pen, and ink and started writing. After a minute or two, he put the pen back in the ink and let it sit there while he rolled up the scroll. Cat, Tenzo, he called out to the shadows in the corners of the room. I need you to gather Anbu squads 3, 4, and 5. I have a select mission specifically for your talents. As he stopped talking, two dark shapes separated from the shadows and bowed before him. Both wore regular Anbu armor and white porcelain masks that displayed an animal of their code name. And Cat. The aforementioned Anbu looked up from the floor at him. I don't need to remind you that the success of this mission ties in extremely well with how I view your loyalties. He knew that she had been involved in the almost assassination of Naruto. He knew it, but that didn't mean he could prove it. She withstood all torture attempts from Ibiki and had just been cleared a day ago. The ones who hadn't been cleared were put to death swiftly. Yes, Hokage-sama, came the muffled reply from behind the mask. Tenzo grabbed the scroll and both shinned from the room with a swirl of leaves, the only indication they had been here. The wizened Sarutobi turned from his desk after they left, and turned to look out the window. He knew he could trust both Anbu explicitly, and that was very important to him, and the success of this mission. If failed, it would cause war within Konaha, a war they didn't need. If they both survived, then they would be sent to Ibiki once more. All of his Anbu would. It was time to clean house. The Hokage's last thought before finally retiring for the night stood in his mind. Goodbye, Danzo. You were a good friend, but I can no longer allow you to harm my family in any way. He left the room with a heavy heart. Scene break. He stood in front of the villagers, slaughtering them all like animals. They all fell beneath the might of his red chakra and claws and teeth, which became weapons of destruction as he turned on the very village he grew up in. He ripped out a woman's throat with his bare mouth, barely noting the look of shock pass through her already dead eyes. He jumped to a man that tried to sneak up on him, and grabbed both of the man's arms and ripped them clean from his body. As the man fell to the ground, a scream rising from his throat, the blonde-haired boy spit the gore of the woman's throat onto him, dousing him in flesh and blood. He looked up, seeing more people in front of him, ready to attack him once more. That didn't bother him in the least. He was unstoppable, and they would pay for their disrespect. Before he could manage it though, a sharp pain in his gut alerted him to the fact that something was lodged in it. He looked down to see a sharp katana protruding through it, blood spilling from the wound. His cloak started waning with the loss of his life source, but he willed it on, drawing on more power. Turning around, he saw the Anbu behind him, frozen in shock. The words she would have said died in her throat. He stood strong, reaching a hand down and breaking the sword in half with his bare hands alone. The purple-haired woman stood shocked still as she held the broken katana in hand and he held the other half. With a shove, he put his half of the katana in her gut, or would have had it not been for her dodging it. He flew forward at increased speeds, wanting nothing more than to bathe in her blood. He shoved a fist forward, but she blocked it with one arm, her own arm burning from contact with his chakra. He used the momentary distraction to lodge his other fist in her face, cracking her mask. The shards tumbled down as he dug his fist harder into her, blood spilling from her lips as she flew back. He ran forward once more, intent on finishing her off as she hit the pavement without a moment to rest, and he started punching her once more. Fist after fist flew at her, a maniacal grin on his lips as he got his reward. Her blood, her face twisted in agony, her lips in a grimace. The light leaving her eyes as her body endured the suffering. Picking up the broken katana, he finally finished her off, blood spilling from the now wounded forehead of hers where the sword was lodged. He didn't have time to recuperate though, as the villagers were on him once more, ninja joining in to avenge their lost comrades. The blonde barely moved from his spot as he swiftly dealt with everything that came at him, whether they be a ninja's tools or a pitchfork from a random civilian. Finally, after an hour of fighting, he reached the end of the line of people that had fell to his hand. He did not care that he had still not killed Danzo. But he still wanted blood. There, down the street, a figure clung in the shadows, spying on him but doing nothing other than that. He ran forward towards it on all fours and jumped the last 3 feet, hand raised to impale the person's chest. They did nothing to stop him, not even raise a hand in defiance. Blood spouted between his clawed fingers as he dug it deeper into the person's chest. A few gasps of breath came from the quickly dying body that the boy reveled in. This was what he was made for. To kill. He pulled his hand out of their chest and let them fall to the ground. There Naruto stood over the lifeless, bloody, and dead body of Hinata Hyuga. Naruto woke up from the nightmare, sweat pouring down from his forehead and tears in his eyes. He leaned up, pulling a knee to his chest and a hand to his forehead. Thank Kami. It was just a dream. It all seemed so real though. Hinata and that Anbu dead. All the blood. How could I have done that? He looked down at his hands as he settled them into his lap and curled his fingers, a grimace flitting across his face. These hands have killed so many. Not just these hands, me too. My hands stained with their blood. I took their life. How could I? He pulled his arm up to wipe away the tears that had gathered in his eyes, only for more tears to appear faster than he could wipe them away. A sob choked itself from his throat. He stayed in that same position for over an hour, weeping at what could have happened had he not been stopped. Were the villagers right? Am I just a demon? I mean, look at what I did. What I could have would have done if the Anbu hadn't gotten so close to killing me. Naruto, he heard Kyuubi's voice resonate in his head. You better stop this instant. You are not a demon, you are merely my container and friend. You did what you did to protect yourself, nothing more, nothing less. Look at my arms, Naruto told the fox. They are covered in fur, like a demon's. How could I be anything but just that? I was willing to kill all those people. That sounds like a demon to me. Naruto sat there shaking as he looked at his arms. His damn arms. Nothing would have happened had they not been changed to what they were. Hell, he had demon-like claws. The question to him was why? Why did they suddenly appear like this? Snap out of it, Baka. Your arms were changed for a reason. If you had only lasted 1 week, if I could have actually got you to go see Tsunami, then none of this would have happened. But that damn old man and his mindwalker just had to come into the picture and destroy everything. What are you talking about? Tsunami? Mindwalker? Naruto's mind cleared of the thoughts from before, with only the nagging hints of it at the back of his mind. Children were easily distracted. Baka, Kyuubi quietly muttered. I had not intended on your arms being changed the way they were. They are special. Tsunami is a resident of the Fox Summons and a very high figure in their world. He is basically the summon master. Have you heard of summoning tattoos? Not really. What are they? They sound cool. They are cool, but their use is more practical. Suppose that you lost the use of your hands and couldn't make the necessary seals to summon. A summoning tattoo rectifies that. It's a seal pattern on your arm that allows you to summon your animal affiliates without the use of seals and can only be done by a master. Tsunami, my grandson, is a master in the art and the only fuinjutsu specialist that is a kitsune. If you get one, all you have to do is mold the correct amount of chakra and wipe blood on the tattoo. Your arms are like that as a side effect. It could just be from the scroll itself or something else. I'm not so sure as of this moment. Not sure? You've lived for hundreds of years. How could you be not sure about anything? Kyuubi let out a low growl at the sarcastic and obviously rhetoric question. Gomen Q, I didn't mean to be rude. But what did you mean about a mindwalker or whatever? A mindwalker or someone who can invade someone else's mind and look at their thoughts, memories, and everything they know. Shortly before you met that old man, someone wandered into my prison, trying to invade your mind. I tried to get them to leave, but their power was strong enough to withstand a weekend and imprisoned me. The person in and of itself isn't that remarkable though. He seemed cold, distant, and on edge, but in need of your memories for one reason or another. Of course I wouldn't let him just access them like that. Eventually, you turned up. At that time, I was afraid of what could happen, so I unleashed some of my chakra, flushing both of you out. Oh, so that's why you hit me with that wave of red chakra. Exactly. Naruto stayed up for another hour or so, trying to use his brain to figure out what this Danzo man wanted. Him and the mind reader had to have some kind of coincidence to try for him both in the same day. It was somewhat confusing. Danzo had said he wanted Naruto for his root but got him kicked out of the village. Why? Eventually, he succumbed to sleep once more when Kyuubi quieted down and he glanced at the clock on the wall. 3 a.m. Naruto vowed that when he woke up he would think more on this and summon one of the foxes for help on his furry problem and figure out what they meant. Scene break. After several more hours of fitful sleep, Naruto finally woke up to see the sun shining down into the window of the motel he was staying at. He hopped out of bed, did his morning routine, before throwing on one of his new outfits and looking at himself in the mirror. He thought the outfit still looked good, though it didn't have much orange. Not enough for his taste anyway. After strapping his sword to his back and putting a few kunai and shuriken in his pocket, along with his book, he got ready to go. Closing the door behind him and locking it with his key, he walked out and towards the bar where Kin worked and the only place in town that served ramen. The walk there was easy, only a block or two away, and most people weren't out shopping at 8 o'clock in the morning. He only passed by a few people. The white-haired man he had seen the other day at the bar, who gave him an odd look as they passed each other, almost like he saw somebody else in him, which was just ridiculous, and an elderly couple holding a bag of breadcrumbs to feed to the birds. Quickly barging into the bar restaurant, Naruto saw it was practically empty. Absolutely no one besides Kin and the man he had seen with her yesterday. Nitin. He walked up to the counter and took a seat on a stool as the two continued talking. What did I tell you about locking up, old man? Kin argued against the sour-faced man. Lock all doors and windows, lock up all the money, and make sure that the alarm is set. Kin, you've told me 100 damn times and I still tell you that that damn alarm is a piece of junk. It goes off if somebody even moves in the whole place. You know how bad it is to get up in the middle of the night to take a piss and hear a constant ringing sound when you do. That ringing sound is just in your head, Nitin. You need to go see a doctor cause I've checked the alarm 100 times and it never does anything like that. The only way it would go off is if someone tries to break in, baka. Then why is it that if I don't set the alarm I still hear a ringing noise down here and then a loud beeping noise that just doesn't stop? Kin took a second to face plant at what he said before pointing an accusing finger at him. That's me calling you to check and make sure that you set the alarm. I always leave a message afterwards, but you never check it. Nitin and Naruto both sweat dropped. If you don't set the alarm, one day someone is going to break in and you'll get robbed, old man. Okay, woman. Geez, just leave a man in peace, Nitin grumbled before walking to the back of the restaurant, leaving Kin and Naruto the only ones there. Naruto turned to her as she finally noticed him and he waved her over. She practically strutted, proud of just having won an argument with the old man, again. What was that about? Naruto asked, confused. Oh, nothing, she said, making a waving gesture with her hand, standing in front of him. Now did you just stop by to see me or did you want something to eat? Actually, for some ramen, Naruto said, tactless as ever. He was hungry for his favorite treat and he would be damned if he didn't get it while he could. Just the thought of the warm and soft noodles filling his mouth and steaming broth pouring down his throat put shudders down his spine. Oh, how he longed for it. Kin just watched the daydreaming look on Naruto's face, a tick mark appearing on her forehead and growing every second as she glared harder and harder at him. Gaki, she warned in a low growl. Naruto paid her almost no mind though. She called him it once more. Again, he barely heard her, but this time blood started leaking from his nose in a small bleed, unnoticed. Gaki, she finally shouted, having had enough of his insolence. She proceeded to pick him up by his collar and strangle him, Naruto finally coming to after a few perverted giggles and mumbles of, ramen. He was confused as to why he was being shaken like a rag doll, but his head was being flung about too much to worry about that for any longer. Another minute or so later, Kin finally put the boy down, her anger abated for the moment. Now then Gaki, what kind of ramen you want? 3 large bowls of miso, and 2 of pork to start, Naruto said gleefully. She nodded before going to help Nitin with the food. Naruto just sat there, impatient, as he non-committedly wiped his nose of any traces of his little ramen fantasy. Several minutes later, exactly 7 in Naruto's count, he was pretty hungry. Kin came out from the back carrying a tray laden with all the bowls of ramen he had ordered. She set them down in front of him and he took a second to break his chopsticks and shout, "Itadakimasu," before he dug in with fever. She stared, disgusted once more, as he ran through bowl after bowl like it was nothing. It was absolutely horrendous. Absolutely no manners, no care for the dirty bowls piling up. She thought he would be more like his new sensei than even her thought. Dear Cammy, if he came here she'd have to deal with 2 of them. Oh, all the dishes, the wrappers that she would surely be expected to clean up. She couldn't help the horrified expression that marred her features as she imagined the mental picture those thoughts sent her. It would be nothing short of torture. A few moments later, Naruto set down his last bowl and looked up, hungry for more. A thought occurred to him. Hey, Kin-chan, how am I supposed to pay for all the food? I spent the rest of my money last night when you showed me around. She just brushed it off. I think you can work here for Nitin when you aren't working over at Takato's. That should be able to feed you and keep ya good until I can get a reply back from Minori. If he says yes, then we'll just wait on him to show up. If he says no, then we'll just figure it out as we go along. Okay, Naruto nodded his consent. Hey, you said that you have a yard for a training ground that I can use. Can I still use it? She seemed to think for a moment, tapping her chin with her index finger. Don't see any problem with that. Just show up here after Takato lets you out and we can have you work a few hours before I let you loose out there. Thanks Kin-chan, you're the best datbayo. No problem Gaki, she told him. Suddenly a large gurgling noise made ITSF clear to both Kin and Naruto. What the hell? Kin asked, looking for the source of the noise. A few seconds later it appeared once more, and Kin stared down at the source. Naruto's stomach. Damn, you must be really hungry, she muttered and then randomly shuddered at the thought. I'll fix you up a few more bowls, but then you gotta go brat. Alright, thanks Kin-chan, Naruto answered with the brightest grin he could to her back. Time skip. Alright, kid, you man the cash register here for a couple hours while I do inventory and stock up on everything I need. And with that, Takato went into the back room, leaving a completely bewildered Naruto to hold the fort against anything that came their way. Like customers. Oh Cammy, how the hell do I do this? Naruto said as he paced about the room, pulling out his hair. All he had done was walk in, before Takato had to leave. Okay, don't panic. This will be easy. All you have to do is have them pay and use the register. It's not that hard. Half an hour of boredom later and he was proven wrong. Ah, Naruto screamed as he punched random buttons on the evil machine, at least as he saw it. How did this happen? Simple. You leave a poster boy for ADHD in a shop to manage it. No way in hell will he last very long. The girl who had bought, at least tried to, a few simple skirts and a pair of panties crawled along the floor trying to dodge flying pennies, quarters, and said pair of panties. Everything was flying everywhere as the register focused its attack on Naruto, loosing heaps of change on him. Naruto barely dodged it, jumping halfway across the room screaming. He turned around to glare at the machine. No way in hell can it reach me over here. To Naruto's fright, the machine slowly wobbled around, flopping onto its side and off the counter. Slowly, little metallic pincers started growing from the corners of it and it started to stand. Naruto's eyes darted around the shop, looking for any type of weapon he could use at all. The closest thing he could see was a broom. A stare down resumed as Naruto slowly circled the beast, eyes locked onto buttons and vice versa. The beast narrowed its buttons at Naruto before it leapt at him, change flying out behind it. Naruto ducked the beast before running the last few feet to the broom and picking it up. He turned around, weapon at the ready, to an unsuspecting scene. The beast held the girl by her neck, a paper note held up to it before it growled out at Naruto, "Bring it, bitch." The next few seconds were a blur, a war cry, the sound of things breaking, a loud "wee," and a cash register flying through a window and out into the street. What the hell is going on? A loud shout echoed as Takato came out of the back room to see money falling from the ceiling, a young girl running out of the shop, Naruto on his ass with a broken broom handle, and his cash register running down the street with an evil glint in its eyes. Button. Did my C cash register J just run A away? A nod was his answer. That's all for now. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments.